The world has changed. My name is Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nick, Rocco, Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every mini-series, we chart a course through the full filmography of an under-discussed genre or journeyman filmmaker. And in this expedition, we do our best to try and be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but always being open to discovering new things about the medium we love so much. This week, we continue our special expedition into the films of Peter Jackson, and today we begin our epic journey into his opus, The Lord of the Rings, with The Fellowship of the Ring, and see if Saruman the Wise has indeed abandoned reason for madness. Nick, how you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing good. I am ready for an epic adventure. I'm ready for the Fellowship is together, and we're going to journey out into Middle-earth and see what we can find.
So this is, by far the biggest movie we've covered on the show.
It's the biggest movie.
I'm going to say. It's one of the biggest. There are very few movies that are in like this sort of category, right? Like a Star Wars is like in this category, right? Like we're in.
It is, and
that's the air we're in right now. You know what I mean? As far as like cultural significance, as far as lasting power, as far as pure financial, gains, there aren't many movies that exist in this sort of space, right? So, our normal bag is like, oh, we're going to talk about this movie no one's ever talked about before for, 2 hours. We are definitely talking about a movie that a lot of people have talked about for a long time. It's a movie that's very important to a lot of people, very important to us in different ways. So, it's obviously the cards on the table. It's an intimidating movie to talk about in the year 2025, 24 years after its release, and seemingly still one of those things that gets rewatched and talked about. Like if you go into like the YouTube like reactor sphere, right? The people who like watch movies for the first time on camera and react to them. These movies are still in the rotation. When a new channel starts, it's on the menu, and they're always some of the biggest episodes that these people do, right? It just has a Warner Brothers who owns the rights to the movies, basically, reorged their entire video game business into what they called like the three pillars, which was like DC, I forgot the other one was, and Lord of the Rings. And there's been like 2 Lord of the Rings games. It's like 3 Lord of the Rings games. So it's like, it's still one of those things that there's that show on Amazon Prime that Amazon paid like $1 gajillion for like 3 inches of the Tolkien like lore to be able to make it to a TV show. There's an animated movie came out last year. There's new live action movie coming out in a couple of years. This is
Gollum game that everybody hated.
Yeah, the Gollum game everybody hated. Exactly. There were the 2 really good, Middle Earth games, the Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War.
I played the first one of those. I liked that a lot. Yeah.
So like very big. Obviously the books, still, just to give a sense, right? The sort of, I don't know what the actual numbers are in this, but the two most read books of the 20th century were the Bible and Lord of the Rings. So like we're talking about like just something that is like omnipresent culturally, right? And unlike I think a lot of things that were, came to the head of their popularity when we were in our late teens, early 20s, this doesn't seem to have lost its luster like a lot of other, of those sort of big properties has lost their luster, whether or not because the quality of the productions went down or because the people who created them became like abject monsters or whatever you want to put around those, things. A lot of things have fallen away, and this has managed to stay pretty pristine and pretty shiny, since those days. We talked about it several times. The movie we're talking about today, The Fellowship of the Ring, the extended edition particularly, we're talking about the extended editions of all of these movies when we talk about them, the 3 Lord of the Rings movies. This movie is my favorite movie of all time. So it's a doubly kind of like, pressure-filled thing for me to talk about because, I want to do justice to myself, not only just to the movie. I'm talking about why I think the movie is so special, right? Well, also, we need to tie this into this ongoing conversation we're having about just the guy, Peter Jackson, and his sort of like directing style, his career, and his progression as a filmmaker, right? So yeah, that's all kind of like the preamble, right?
So much. That's it. Like that's kind of what I was saying before. We're going to be here all night and probably into tomorrow. I have no idea. Like the length of this episode I hope we cut it down to something, but just like when Peter Jackson became the subject of conversation on this show, one, I was very excited to do it because I really like Peter Jackson. This is also, I wouldn't call this my favorite movie, but it's in the conversation. You know, it's definitely top 50 of all time, if not even closer to the top than that. And so I was very excited. It's been a while since I've seen it, and I knew that this was coming, and I couldn't wait to watch it again. But also, like, there's so much to talk about. There's so much that's going into this. As you said, just tying this back into the Jackson filmography is a thing we have to do. But then also we have to do justice to this movie. Yeah. And I feel like particularly this one, this is my favorite of the three. It's the one that is the most meaningful to me. Is the one that just seeing it the first time, I'll never forget that experience. You know, it is one of the great movie going experiences of my life. I think I saw it twice in theaters when it came out. And, you know, it is daunting. It is a real challenge to talk about something that is just so like the magnitude of this. Yeah. And there's movies that I like better than this. You know, it's I wouldn't put it in my top 3 of all time, but I feel like of those movies that are the most meaningful and most powerful to me, this might be one of the hardest to talk about because there just is so much to it. Yeah. And there's so much that like I don't want to leave out. And seeing it again for the first time in a while, I thought I would be able to kind of narrow things down a little bit. And it was the opposite. It's like, no, we got to talk about this and then this and then this. And I don't know. So I'm happy to be here, but also, you know, I should have just brewed a pot of coffee and kept it by my side or something.
The challenge for me watching it this time, it is a movie that it's probably the movie I've seen the most. The challenge for me watching it this time was I know it so well, right? And I haven't watched it fully through in quite a few years, right? It's not a movie I watch every year. It's not that kind of thing for me. I'm not really that kind of person, right?
How could you have the time for that?
But I'm not the kind of person who's like, it's my yearly rewatch of X. Like, that's just not the way I am with movies for the most part. But even so, I put this on and it was like, you know, I know it by heart, right? I could just say all the words that are happening. And after the first like 10 minutes, I was like, okay, no, I need to like lock in and like really focus on watching it because I can watch it on autopilot and know everything that happened and feel all the same feelings because they're just kind of baked into my mind, into my body, into my sense memory. And so for this, I was like, no, I just need to lock in. So actually, I think I've talked about this before, but you know, I have an Apple TV and you can put your AirPods can hook up to it like kind of seamlessly. So I have like AirPod Pros or whatever. I stuck those in my ears and I just like was like, I'm going to be in this fully, no distractions, nothing, which was great. I mean, it was really like having that sort of impetus to do it was really nice because it was like I was seeing things not for the first time, but for the first time in a long time watching the movie that I kind of I just sort of like go by me because I just know everything, you know? It's kind of like when you're driving to work every day and you're like, sometimes you're like, how did I even get here? You know, because you just know it so well. That's what happens sometimes when I watch these movies, and I didn't do that this time. But I want to start before we get into like our thoughts, you know, watching this time.
I can't wait to like. I'm interested to see where you want to start because there's so many places that we can start.
So the place I want to start is in 2001. This movie comes out December 2001. Before you see this movie, what is your familiarity with Lord of the Rings? And what is sort of like your excitement level for seeing a Lord of the Rings movie, I guess, is where I want to start in that time.
That's a good question. Yeah. I would say very excited to see the movie based on nothing other than I knew it was going to be kind of an event. I knew a lot of people that were way more excited about it than I was. As we've talked about on the show before, I was a fan of Peter Jackson's work, going back to Dead Alive, really liked I don't know if I had seen Heavenly Creatures yet, but I really was a big fan of The Frighteners as well. So I knew this was a filmmaker who was interesting and ambitious and was doing some really cool stuff on kind of a lower budget, you know, not as a like big studio, big budget sort of filmmaker, but someone who I knew was capable of doing some really interesting stuff. I had never read Tolkien, was like, it's weird because I really like this stuff. And I didn't really grow up with fantasy and all these like sort of classics of sci-fi and fantasy. Dune was the same way for me, right? Like I didn't read that until after I saw the first movie that came out just recently, not the Lynch movie, but the Villeneuve movie. So I think it was, you know, I was excited for it more because I knew it was going to be a big thing that like was going to be part of the conversation. I also, had seen some previews, and just the scope of it was really appealing to me. I grew up listening to Led Zeppelin, so that was kind of my familiarity with the Shire, or the Mordor and things like that. So I had a little bit of understanding of what the story was. I knew it was a big thing, for like my parents' generation growing up reading that in the 60s and 70s, and obviously Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant was very inspired by it as well. I had never seen the animated movies. I'd never listened to any of the radio adaptations or anything like that. So I went into it somewhat blindly, but just having an understanding of like what kind of story it was. And, I've always kind of liked that high fantasy stuff, although I never read a lot of it. There's like not really a lot of movies that I would consider. Yeah. It was a thing that, I don't know, I figured I'd always get to at some point. So this was the point that I was going to get to it.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, kind of similar to what you're saying, though. I think even I had read The Hobbit as a kid, and I had seen the animated Hobbit film. So I kind of knew like that world, but I wouldn't say I was like, it was one of my things when I was a kid, right? I knew it just from that. And I had tried, I was very big at that time of being like, oh, there's a movie coming out of some book that I've never read. I will try to read the book before I see the movie. And I tried to read Lord of the Rings like 3 times, and I just could not get past like the first, like the Concerning Hobbits chapter where it's like name, place, name, place, name, place, name, name. And it was overwhelming for me at like, when I tried to read it originally, like 17, 18, right? Like 16, 17, 18, I just couldn't do it at that time. And I'd seen the trailers for the movie, and I've been like, this looks cool. But I think it's important to contextualize that at this time, big fantasy movies were not a thing, right? Like it very much was not a thing. Like to me, at our age at that time, like Dragonheart was like, was probably the sort of like biggest, like, highest budget sort of fantasy movie. And it was kind of a joke, right? Like it had kind of become a thing where, unless you were really going to try to make it like realistic and gritty, it wasn't a thing that people came out for, wasn't that people were really into, and effects hadn't really caught up with the things that people were trying to do in these kind of movies. So I was kind of
like at this point we're kind of getting there, right? I mean, this is a year after Gladiator. I mean, there are big movies that are kind of on this blockbuster
epic,
scale,
though. But that's not a fantasy epic, right? That's what I mean. Yeah,
but
aren't like elves and orcs and fire monsters,
big budget sci-fi and like X-Men. We've seen some stuff at this point where it's like we're kind of ready. Like I was always
pump is definitely primed for sure.
This is the point in my life and the point I think in Hollywood history where it's like these big scale movies, these blockbusters, amazing things are happening, and I was, as a young-ish film fan, I was like 17, 18 when this came out. Maybe even older, maybe 19. Anyway, I'm going to see every big blockbuster movie anyway. It's whatever it is. If it's a Jurassic Park or a sequel or a comic book movie, because there weren't a lot of those at the time.
No, there was like 2, but this comes out.
The first
but
Harry
actually,
Potter
if you look
movie.
at the 90s, Harry Potter hasn't even come out yet at this point. Harry Potter is, but I will say Harry Potter, I guess, comes out a month before Lord of the Rings is when Harry Potter comes out.
Yeah, it's 2001 as well, right?
2001. It's November of 2001. This is December of 2001, The Fellowship of the Ring. But if you look at like the 90s, you don't see like this gradual build towards big budget fantasy movies coming back. And if you go back at the time and look at sort of like the kind of lead up to this movie, there was a lot of doubt that this movie would be financially successful because like, well, do people really want to see this stuff? Like that was a big thing. It shows you how little people have always known pre-reporting on how things are going to go with this kind of stuff. But like, so I was not like, it was my first year of college. It was 2001 was my first year of college. And also you got to remember that in September, 9/11 had happened, right? So like movies got thrown, culture got thrown way out of sorts for a good amount of time, right? And I remember very clearly being like, yeah, I'll see that. But like, it wasn't like I was like, I was in college. I didn't have like a bunch of friends yet. Like it was like a couple months into college. I didn't have that group of people where I was like, I'm going to go do these things with them. Right. So I wasn't like, I'm going to go see this movie opening night. And I remember I had rehearsal for the musical that I was in. And this guy, I think I was a freshman. I think this guy was either he was a junior or a senior. I don't remember which one he was, but he was in the play and he was like, hey, a couple of us are going to see Lord of the Rings tonight. Do you want to come? And I was like, okay. More because I was like, I want to be friends with the older theater kids than I was like, I went to the movie. And I remember so clearly we went to this little UA in like East Hampton, which is a little theater, because I went to school out in Southampton, in New York. And I remember this, it's so funny with things that can burn in your brain. The music video for Wonder Boy by Tenacious D is playing on a TV in the lobby.
Love Tenacious D. Love that video.
Yeah. And I was like, this is,
very Lord of the Rings inspired.
Very Lord of the Rings-esque video, right? Something was in the air. Something was in the soup at that moment. You know what I mean? And then I saw the movie and it was just like this transcendent experience, basically. And I saw Fellowship of the Ring in the theaters 7 times. Yeah. Like basically it was just like every weekend we would go, and then break happened and it was like winter break. And me and my best friend back from home, he also saw it and loved it. So we would just go. And then there was one time where ghost of the podcast, Brian Verderosa, he had like an inn at Movieland or whatever, this little theater by where we lived. And he like got them to do like he got enough friends together. So they did like a private screening of Fellowship of the Ring, like for just like people we knew, basically. So we saw it there. And then right when it was leaving theaters, basically they brought it back for like a little bit of time, sort of like the Oscar sort of lead up time.
I remember that.
They brought it back, and their big sell with it was at the end of it, there is a teaser for the Two Towers. There was like a preview of the Two Towers. There had been no trailer yet for the Two Towers at this point.
Which was already scheduled to come out a year later. Like
directly a year
later. This plan
was
already in order to do 1, 2,
December
3.
Every year would be the 3 movies.
As they had done it. That was the other thing, by the way, before I forget. We also have 2 trilogies happening at the time. Neither one of them as good as this one, obviously. Yeah. But we're talking about the Star Wars prequels and The Matrix, which was a big one. I remember, I was in college at this time. I was a sophomore. But we were waiting on the Matrix sequels. We were waiting for Lucas to complete the prequel trilogy to Star Wars. And so, I guess there was, maybe because we got so disappointed with those, there was some said, well, I don't think
this comes out before. I mean, this comes out after Phantom Menace.
It
comes out after Phantom Menace, but it comes out before Attack of the Clones.
Before Matrix.
And before Matrix.
Reloaded.
Because Matrix Reloaded and Attack of the Clones come out within like a couple of weeks of each other. I believe the 2002, the summer of 2002, I believe is when that happens, right?
But I think we kind of had this like trilogy fever at this time. So the idea that this is the start of a much longer thing, and like that movies are starting to do this. I mean, we didn't really have as much of that as we kind of do now, where things are conceived right from the beginning as this is going to be a 3-movie trilogy. Yeah.
So it comes back in, and we drive to this theater. Like only theater it's showing it is like this art cinema that's like 45 minutes away. We get lost on the way there, but we get there and we see it again for the last time in the theaters. We see the Two Towers thing. We freak out, and that was it. And then the DVDs are out, and I kind of, we watch the DVDs over and over and over again, watch all the special features over and over and over again. And then they do this thing, which I don't know, had never been done before like this, which was, we have an extended edition of the movie, which is about 30 minutes longer than 20 minutes longer, 25 minutes longer than the theatrical film. And it's not like it's like, pushed in deleted scenes. These are like completely finished effects, everything scenes. It's packaged up in this beautiful, again, this is prime DVD time too, right? Where it's like, you make so much money on DVD like that it's insane, right?
Oh, so that is a handsome package, isn't it?
It's a handsome package.
I still have it. That's. I watched a little bit of Fellowship on that set.
Yeah, the DVD is amazing, and it comes with, 3 hours of special features on it, in addition to the 1.5 hour long making of documentary that was already on the original Fellowship DVDs. So not only are you getting like this movie that you love, but if you love this movie, it's like heaven, right? Because you're just like, I'm going to spend all of this time, with this lovingly crafted behind the scenes thing. We talked about this when we did the Frighteners, where, before anybody knew who he was, he hired somebody to film all the behind the scenes. And so he's doing it again here. There's also like on this DVD, there's 4 commentary tracks. Like there's like directors and writers, cast, like visual effects people you would never expect to be on a commentary track, right? And all of their own commentary tracks to go through, which I watched a billion times, you know? So it's like, you know, the amount of times I've seen these movies is insane, right? So it's like, and at the time, like, okay, I go through all three of them and I'm like, you know, well, I'm like, Return of the King is my favorite at the time, right? And then quickly after that, I'm like, no, Fellowship is the best one and it's my favorite one, and has stayed that way for like, you know, 20 years at this point. I've kind of been that, you know, for me. But yeah.
Well, I don't think there's a wrong choice. I think they're all great.
No, there's not. There isn't.
And, you know, I mean, I guess one or three. Although I know people who prefer Two Towers over everything else.
I know plenty of people who love Two Towers the most, you know, out of all of them.
But maybe that's the next place to go is this is you and I both feel of this trilogy, they're all 4-star movies. I mean, I don't think there's a false note here. This is not one of those trilogies where the second film is just like a bunch of crap to set up the third film. Yeah. It's not one of those things where it's like, you know, with The Matrix, right? You have the very perfect standalone first movie, and then 2 and 3 are just kind of like shot back to back. And there's, I mean, I don't want to get too much into the Matrix trilogy.
No, we don't have to get into the movie. We have so much to talk about to get into the Matrix.
Major problems with the second and the third.
Well, it's basically never worked other than this to do what Lord of the Rings did. Everyone tries to do it now, and it like never works to do this, where they go like, we're gonna make all the movies at once.
The original Star Wars trilogy, right? I mean, it's a standalone movie. It's a terrific. That's the one where the second is probably the best. I mean, it is the best of the three. And then the third is, I like Return of the Jedi a lot.
Yeah,
but
of course.
This is one where the quality level is pretty consistent all the way through. For me, the reason why I love this one the most, and I think we've talked about this, you know, discussing our favorite movies, discussing our top 10 list. It's two things, really. And one of them is the introduction to this world, which was, you know, I saw it with a college buddy of mine who I was so mad at him because he kept like elbowing me when we were watching it the first time, being like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. And like I was thinking that too, but it's like, shut up, I'm trying to watch the movie. But like every place that we went to, every little bit of lore that gets introduced, every new character, every little relationship that gets developed here. I mean, you can only do that once, right? Like this is the introduction to the world, the introduction to these characters, the introduction to the whole sort of story. And so I really love that about it. You know, the world building is as good as it gets. And the other thing that, and it particularly struck me when I saw it this time, and I've always kind of thought this is the one of the three that's more of a road movie, which is...
Oh, for sure, yes.
You know, I mean, they all kind of have these genre things. You know, Two Towers is like a war movie. Return of the King is this epic conclusion. But what this one is, it's this travel flick, right?
Yes.
It's they cover the most amount of distance. It is the most about kind of getting away from home, and like that's a sort of story thing that speaks to me. And also, this is the one where the Fellowship is actually together on the road.
Yeah, that's
for a lot
the big
of it. Like,
thing. That's
this
the
is
big
before
thing,
things kind of split off. And as good as that all is, there's nothing I love in this trilogy more than seeing these characters all together and kind of getting to know each other and realizing the gravity of the situation that they're in. And, you know, I love that part of it. You know, that this trilogy is so much about camaraderie and friendship and fellowship. And this is the movie that really kind of cements that. So that's there. And also it's just, as you were saying, right? Like neither one of us went into this like huge Tolkien fans, knowing everything about this lore and about this world. And so just kind of getting hit over the head with it all at once, you know, this incredible experience, seeing this film in the theater. I mean, it's kind of unbeatable. Like there was no way he could have outdone that for me. And as good as the other two movies are, this is the one I've seen the most. And it's like probably 4 or 5 times because it's a very long watch, you know? You know, it's like that epic novel that you've read once when you were a kid. And it's like, yeah, I want to revisit it. I remember everything about it, but do I want to kind of read that again?
I've seen this movie 20 times, probably.
Okay.
At least, I think. So it's one of those things. I totally agree with you. All your points, I completely back up with what you're saying, why I think it's the best as well. You know, road movie, yes. It's also the only one that's truly like an adventure movie, right?
Yes, absolutely. It is the greatest adventure movie.
Yeah. And the way that I categorize adventure over action, just so people can think of it, is like, adventure is very much about like, oh no, there's something there, we have to run away from it, right? Like that's so much of what happens in adventure movies. It's not the only thing, but you know, an action movie, it's like, okay, big monster, everybody turn, fight, it's a battle, right? In an adventure movie, it's like, oh God, we gotta get out of here. Like, look at the Moria sequence, right?
That's interesting, because I think an adventure movie is more about a quest narrative, right? Which this one very much is.
But you can have an action movie that's also a quest. You know, you can have an action movie that's also a quest. But for me, it's like, they're constantly like escaping something or trying to figure out a way out of something. It's so much less about like, let's turn around and fight than it is about like, how do we get out or get through these sort of, unbelievable, huge, scary situations, right?
Well, I also love, and again, it's a thing that's set up perfectly here, like we know what the end goal of this is, right? They are going to a place to do a thing, and I like that. That's all kind of laid out. We know what the stakes are. We know what's opposing them, although that kind of builds, I forgot how little, like the ring wraiths are only in the first half of this, and I remember them being like kind of there because they're so scary, and they're so cool.
Yeah.
And then you get the Uruk-hai.
Uruk-hai. Yep. You're saying right.
How terrifying are they? Like,
terrifying.
You don't really get them till the second half of the movie. And this is just the first movie in the trilogy.
Yeah.
Man, we're going to be here all night.
Yeah. So, I mean,
but I love that aspect of it as well.
Yeah.
The sense that we know they're not going to get there by the end of this movie, but like how this is all sort of laid out and what the linear progression of things is going to be. Because, Two Towers especially, they kind of branch off from that a lot where we forget about the whole Mordor thing. Well, not that we forget about it, but there's other stuff to be done. Whereas here, it's just like we're starting here, we're going here, and I like that the simplicity of that. There's something like very elemental about that. Like that's what an epic story is. And in terms of being an epic, like I can't think of a movie that is more sweeping than this, that covers more ground or space. It just, I don't know, like there's nothing like it. And seeing it this time, that really solidified that for me. That's, I love Star Wars, particularly the first trilogy, mostly the first trilogy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of films that are like this in some sense that you can compare this to, but there's none that are quite doing what Fellowship of the Ring is doing.
No. And of course, like, like we always do, like Nick put together a really, really good, like kind of, background on the movie, especially the pre-production aspect of it. And we'll definitely talk about some of this. I mean, the thing is like, most people know all this stuff already, right? This is stuff that's been talked about a ton, just like everything else. I think some of it definitely speaks to what we've been talking about with Jackson in a lot of ways, to bring it back to him, is that he's always seemed like a guy who is not intimidated to try to like punch above his station, right?
Sure.
Like we've talked about all his movies so far. He has never made anything like this before. Like there are elements in this, obviously, of his previous work, and we'll talk about that as we go through it. But he's never approached anything close to this, right? We are talking about, 3 times the budget for just one of the movies, compared to, and I'm talking about all 3. The scale of the production,
Shooting amount of them all at once, doing this, locking in on the idea that we are making this a trilogy. We're shooting the entire thing in New Zealand, which you can.
Basically creating a film industry, essentially, in a country. Pioneering a bunch of technological things that had never been done before.
Right, like it's such a big step up for him, but it would have been a big step up for anybody. Like if Spielberg embarks on this, you'd be like, wow, that's going to be the biggest movie of Spielberg's. And he's made, the movies that he's made. Jaws,
some of the biggest movies ever.
And Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Which there's so much Raiders of the Lost Ark in this movie, which is another one of my favorites.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of Jaws in this, I would say,
It's a little bit of all the things you can tell that he is incredibly influenced and love, and but just the fact that we talked about this in a couple other episodes, the high degree of difficulty, right? It's not just, okay, we need to show this world, right? And I want these, crazy, huge, they end up calling them bigatures, not miniatures, bigatures, because they were so big. I mean, they were like, like scale of them crazy huge, like, taller than people. These giant things, and marrying them with visual, with real footage, and sort of marrying, a lot of, groundbreaking special effects with real footage, but also saying like, but I do not want it to be this thing where the camera just sits there where you see this thing. Like the camera cannot be locked down. I want to swing this camera through this thing, up this thing, around this thing, and I want it to seamlessly go from here to here. Like there's that scene where Gandalf's on top of Saruman's tower.
I love it. Isengard,
right? And the moth comes, he catches the moth, he talks to the moth flies away, and without cutting, the camera then goes down the tower into the pits below the tower to the scene where like the Uruk-hai are like basically being born.
What an incredible, and it's like, it's all one seamless camera move. I mean, there's a lot of that stuff here.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, that's it. Like it's such a big movie in so many ways, and it's always, there's so much that I want to say about it, but that's those shots again, I mean, that's the stuff that really grabbed me, I think, the first time I saw it, especially. But, you know, going through it, and I haven't seen it nearly as many times as you have, but like this incredible scale and this like dizzying, like that's a dizzying shot, right? Like the ambition of this movie, like everything about it is just huge. And yet there's these like quiet moments. There's all this little character stuff that is just beautiful. And like particularly in the extended edition, right? Because I know there's a lot more of this here, but like, I don't know if anyone's ever struck a balance like that before, right? Like this sense of this entire world and these epic scale battles and this quest narrative, but also like these little, you know, moments of enjoy, little moments of humor. There's a lot of stuff with Gandalf that I forgot about, like these little asides, these glances, these little looks, you know, and like witty lines of dialogue and stuff, and just this like friendly banter, and it's just so well done here.
Yeah. I mean, I think the key to all of the movies, but it's especially obviously, like we said, the most in here, which is that for every sweeping shot you get, for every big action scene you get, there is a scene with two people talking and you're connecting with them on a character level.
Sure.
Because he understands that this big stuff doesn't matter if this stuff, the little stuff, doesn't matter. You know, he just understands it, right? He just knows that that's the case. And he knows that if I spend all my time, I can make the best battles possible. I can make the craziest looking things possible. But if you don't care about the 9 people who are walking across this mountain, it doesn't matter, right? It won't matter to anybody. And also, he really seems to genuinely care about the source material, where it comes from, what the meaning of the source material is, and what it takes to put that on screen, right?
And he's not dumbing it down, right? No. I mean, it's like, not that I haven't read it, still haven't read it. Maybe someday I will attempt it.
I've now read them like 7 times. That's the thing too. After I saw this movie, I read it a bunch. But yeah.
But you know, you could tell even from the first time I saw this that like we're gonna drop names, we're gonna mention things here that you may not know everything about, and I really like that stuff. You know, it really does feel like this is a big, living, breathing sort of world with a lot of history and a lot of lore, and you know, there are ways to kind of pare that down, but why do it? You know, you're just going to piss off the fans of the literary works that way. And also it just kind of makes it feel more significant and more monumental. And, you know, that's really balanced nicely by the human stuff also. Like all these scenes of like fear and misgivings and, you know, can we accomplish this? You know, these are not the kind of heroes that we often see in movies where they're just so like on top of everything, and you know, they feel fallible. There is this threat. There's this like sort of looming threat throughout the movie that he carries through really well. And also just the ring itself, you know, this idea that you're carrying this thing that could completely destroy you, and then you could go on and destroy the entire world just because you have it. And he really has a great sense of that. And I think that's, you know, maybe that's the most interesting thing in Tolkien's story. And like Jackson never lets that go. Like there's never a moment in this where you're like, everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah. I mean, there is this overriding theme, right, that I think is through all 3 movies and is so important, which is this is not something that one person can do by themselves, right? This is something that takes a community. It takes fellowship. It takes people standing up for each other and, you know, lifting each other up and being there when they're about to fall, and you know, all of this stuff. Like that's what it's about, you know. And I think that and it's why, you know, a lot of this, like, you know, the sort of at the time these little like snickering like Sam and Frodo are gay, you know, all this stuff is like, you know, as like detracting statements about them or whatever. And it's like whatever their sexuality is or whatever you're defining it as, like this is just people being open and emotional and true with each other and having this bond that means like, yeah, I'm going to cry if something bad happens to you, and, you know, I'm going to lift you up when you can't lift yourself, you know. And I think that is so much what this is about. And, you know, and I think is something that can easily be dismissed if you're being cynical about something, right? And it's very easy, I think, especially, you know, in the years since this movie, they're you know, the storytelling world goes through ebbs and flows, but there was a long period of like, you know, the sort of like cold-shouldered cynicism or sarcasm was the default sort of mode of, heroes and protagonists and all these kind of things.
But that's 80s and 90s action movies. And we grew up on those and we loved those. I still love those.
But also, and I think in the last, I think in the last 10, 15 years, even that's been a thing, right? And I think, just bringing this back to something modern that's happening right now of seeing Superman, right? Superman, oddly, is very much about this thing we're talking about, which is he can't do it all himself. He needs people to help him, right? And he's not afraid to say, I'm scared, right? I'm scared of things. I make mistakes, I do things wrong, and this is so much what this is about as well, right? Is and it's so much about the, this little creature who you wouldn't think would be able to, do anything is the perfect person to do it, right? And just because they're not the person who's the best swordsman or, the greatest warrior or an elf who can shoot 17 arrows in 3 seconds, or whatever. That doesn't mean that they're not the right person for this job, right? And I think that the movie does such a great job of always reminding you of those things. And, and I think what happens if you watch all the behind the scenes stuff and talking about the things, it also seemed like the stuff that Jackson and, Fran Walsh, his partner in life and his writing partner, and Philippa Boyens, who is a kind of a new member of their team for this, who was a Lord of the Rings obsessive, their sort of dedication to those themes and to staying thematically true, not necessarily always plot or character, not every line is said by the same person that said in the book, not every plot detail is exactly the same, but thematically sticking to it seemed to trickle down to all the people in the cast, all the crafts people, all of those people, right? And because you hear people, these stories Sean Astin will say the scene where Frodo wakes up in Rivendell, Ian McKellen came out to me and he goes when you come in here, make sure you grab his hand because that's what happens in the book and people are going to be looking for you to grab his hand when he wakes up. That's not Peter Jackson coming in and saying that, that's another actor coming in and saying it. Or Viggo Mortensen coming in, never having read Lord of the Rings, and by the time the movies are over, he's read, he's one of the foremost experts on it. You know what I mean? It's these things where these people really, cared about it. And, Jackson says in one of the interviews, he goes, and I think that really comes across in the movie itself. And he's absolutely right, I think.
As ambitious a project as this was, I feel like everyone involved with it kind of knew if they did it right, then if you build it, they will come, right? And it is the phenomenon that it is because there was this belief in it, and that's even with New Line Cinema, right? This kind of lesser production company, this lesser studio that kind of made their bones on lower budget horror franchises. They're the house that Freddy built, right?
Yeah.
And they wanted a franchise, and rather than just take the hot trendy sort of thing, a Matrix ripoff at the time probably would have been, they do this. And there is a lot of, I guess this movie, I'm not particularly religious, but I do think faith kind of is a strong sort of theme here as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a lot of that, and just sort of everyone making this, they believed in it. They knew it was going to be a challenge, and they knew it was going to be very tough, and they were going to have to sort of work harder than you normally have to do. I mean, there are many easier ways to make this movie, and I don't want to go too much into the pre-production history because we can talk about that all day, but this is in development for a while. He makes The Frighteners in 96, and starting in 95, he starts coming up with the idea for doing a fantasy movie, mostly just to keep Weta Workshop in business. Let's do something that's kind of effects driven and effects heavy. He and Fran Walsh realized that everything they're writing is basically just the Lord of the Rings, just a lesser version of that. So it's we might as well just make it and get the rights to it and everything. But all through this sort of hellish development, bro, with Harvey Weinstein, he's under contract with Miramax, and so Weinstein's on board for it, but wants to do it his way and wants to make it one movie. And it's
at first they wanted to make The Hobbit. He wanted to make The Hobbit first. He was we'll make The Hobbit first. Yeah. If it's successful, we make Lord of the Rings, and we'll make a 2-movie Lord of the Rings. They kind of had conceptualized a script that would be 2 movies, make the 3 books into 2 movies, essentially. Yeah,
right. And it keeps coming back to, no, do it as 1 movie. And he doesn't want to do that, and I understand why he doesn't want to do that.
But another thing where Jackson is just, this is the thing about these guys, he's Jackson's never made a movie even the 1 movie of Lord of the Rings would have been 4 times as big as any movie he'd ever made. And, he instead goes to, at the time, is one of the most powerful people in Hollywood. And he goes, no, please put the movie in turnaround so that we have a chance for other people to take a look at it, essentially.
Right. And at that point, the whole thing could just be kaput, right? Like it's Weinstein agrees to that. And luckily, and it was a short, I think it was like a 4-week turnaround period, which usually that's like months or years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But like other studios have a crack at it. He makes this 35-minute, I'd love to see this. This is probably on the DVD somewhere, where it's like, here's kind of a sizzle reel or like a making of this movie that's not even made yet. And that's the thing that kind of gets New Line interested, and they're looking for a franchise at the time. But yeah, I mean, it requires this sort of suspension of disbelief. That's the wrong term for it, but it's this blind faith in something that, he's made some really good small movies. He makes a cult classic, he makes kind of a prestige pick, and then he makes a solid studio movie in The Frighteners, which was not successful. But it's like they're putting a lot of faith in this guy.
This is not James Cameron or Steven Spielberg or someone like that who's helmed,
and
or even...
and those guys feel like they're scared of this, right? Like James Cameron, Spielberg, they could have made this movie. Like, this has probably been pitched to them because these rights have been owned by Saul Zaentz for a long time.
For a long time, yeah.
So like someone could have done this, and I think everybody's just like, no, that's too much of a risk, and we don't necessarily want to try to attempt something like that. So it's a lot that they're, that Peter Jackson is asking, and it's a lot that they're asking of this movie. And like, it could have easily gone the other way.
And I would say another important part of this pre-production process to bring up is that during the time where he was like, I want to make The Hobbit, and, Weinstein was like, no, let's do Lord of the Rings. It was not really like a real thing, right? There was like, Weinstein still had to get Zaentz to give the rights over and not be a producer or all this kind of stuff. So at the time, Jackson gets hired to make King Kong in 1997 at Universal.
Interesting, right? Like in the pre-production of this, he's contracted to do The Hobbit, and then he's also contracted to do King Kong, and those come later in his filmography.
Which is
we'll
crazy.
Be talking about those soon.
Yeah, which is crazy. Weinstein, of course, furious. And then, basically the King Kong doesn't go through. It gets canceled, comes back. And this is the point where he's like, okay, we can make Lord of the Rings. It's one movie. And that's when it goes into turnaround. And then, the guys at New Line, they kind of do their presentation. And this is a famous story now, right? Where they watch it, they finish off, and, he goes like, Michael Shea, that's his name, right?
Bob Shea.
Bob Shea goes, well, this isn't 2 movies. And they're all kind of like downtrodden. He goes, this is 3 movies, and it's like this huge, this big story. And one of the things he does say is like, because times movie tickets cost $9 at the time. He goes, why would you want to get $18 out of people when you could get $27 out of people? It doesn't make any sense.
I saw that quote, and I think I got a little sad that movies used to be that cheap to go see.
I know. But it's, it's just really interesting. It's really true. It's like one of those times where studio executive thinking makes sense, where he's like, yeah, well, it's supposed to be 3. These are 3. It's famously 3 books. So why would we make 2 movies? Where we have the biggest excuse in the world to make 3 movies out of this.
But think of that investment, right? Like this is such a big movie. What if it bombs? But
I will say this: at the time, before all the reshoots happened, right? Because there's famously, we'll talk about this more when we do Two Towers and when we do A Return of the King. But they shot for like 15 months and shot these 3 movies in 15 months, which is crazy. But they shot all 3 for $93 million, which is insane. Like, that's an insane thing to think about. Where now it costs, you can't make a movie like this for less than $200 million. One movie for less than $200 million.
Yeah.
Just does not happen anymore. So, like, this is 3 movies for the price of 1, essentially, Because $100 million was, like, sort of a normal budget for a huge blockbuster at this time. We were getting to that zone, right?
And just in terms of running time and scope, this is like 6 movies.
Yeah. They go back and they shoot a ton after that additional side of shoot, and they add a bunch of money to the budget, obviously. But by that time, Fellowship of the Ring is already a massive critical commercial award success, right? Cultural success. So there's no issue. Let's go back to New Zealand and shoot some more. Like, because, we want to do some more. We want to make sure we get this right? So they come back in. But it's a lot of money. But Jackson and the cinematographer Andrew Lesnie have this on one of the special features is like, this is the biggest small budget movie in the history of the world, basically. It's a lot of money, obviously, but it's not a lot of money for what they're doing, right? And his big pitch was like, if we do this in New Zealand, it's so much cheaper. I own the effects companies. Like, it's like, you're saving so much money doing it like this, right? For if you try to do it in the traditional way with like ILM and whatever, the budget's going to balloon to a crazy amount of money, right? You know, they bring on a bunch of people who, you know, we talk about Boyens. Howard Shore's brought on to do the music. Again, one of the things where it's like, Howard Shore, like a great composer at this time, still has done a lot of great things, but he is like a horror composer. He is like a David Cronenberg, David Fincher. Like he does, you know, moody, you know, scary scores. You know, he doesn't do John Williams, Alan Silvestri, James Horner, Jerry Goldsmith, big sweeping scores, right? And as well, Andrew Lesnie comes on as cinematographer. Andrew Lesnie had shot Babe and Babe Pig in the City. You know, big popular movies, but not this, right? Not this kind of thing.
Yeah, very well shot movies, but nothing on this scale, nothing with these kind of, you know, sweeping, you know, exteriors and things. We got to talk about the score a little bit more because...
We'll talk about the score. I think we'll do that as we go through the parts because they'll naturally come up, but I have a lot to say about the score, obviously. You know, Leslie then, of course, goes on to shoot all of Jackson's films. From that, Howard Shore will score, like, all of Jackson's films. John Gilbert, who's edited, you know, the other stuff that Jackson has done, he's here still. You know, he keeps those people around. Richard Taylor, you know, is back again, you know, adding a whole bunch of new people into Christian Rivers, who is at what a digital now. You know, he does all the storyboards. That's the thing too. They storyboard Jackson does like rough storyboards. This artist, Christian Rivers, does like really in-depth storyboards.
2D animated stuff.
Yeah. And
so
then they do
kind
like,
of pre-visualize this entire thing extensively.
Then they do previs in the computer. They have to go, and this is crazy thing we watch this stuff because like they have to go to ILM to like learn how it works because it's not a thing yet. Like it's not a thing where they use computers to previs shots. They previs shots and then they also go in and they build smaller scale but still huge versions of these miniatures that they're going to eventually build huge. And Jackson goes in with like dolls and stuff and with a little lipstick camera and shoots the stuff there as well. So there's like, by the time the cast gets to New Zealand to shoot, Peter Jackson's like screens them basically like a cut of the movie made out of these elements. So like, that's crazy. But that's showing you that like, this is somebody who knows like, this is the biggest job I've ever had. I'm going to take it seriously. And I'm going to make sure that when I sit down to do this, it's going to be what I want it to be, right? It's not going to let, you know, there's going to be so much of I can't control once we walk out into those mountains. Like, I'm going to control everything I possibly can first, right? They build crazy sets as well. You know, like the Hobbiton stuff. They build, you know, an outside, like, you know, basically that outside area is real. They can walk around it. They can do stuff in it. They have to build two versions of almost every set, because they have to build a small version and a big version, like so that the regular actors look tall.
This movie is incredible. And like, you know, we are at a point and this might be the last time where this is the case where, you know, digital special effects, CGI is a thing at this point, right? And you can do some pretty incredible stuff with it, but he's determined to shoot so much of this practically and sort of marry those two things together. And like the scene where Frodo and Gandalf very early in the movie where they're riding in the carriage together. And, you know, I didn't know this till years later, but then you see the behind the scenes stuff where they built this carriage where one side is higher than the other. Like they're just sort of constructing all this stuff to do this incredible forced perspective work. And it's like, you don't even notice it. Like, you're just watching this movie, like, okay, these people are little, these people are big, and that's just the way it is. Like,
it's like the Jurassic Park thing. It's like, when you saw Jurassic Park, you were like, oh, there are dinosaurs. You know, like, that's what it feels like when you watch this.
But I mean, it's just, I think it's even more seamless here. And it's,
no, it is.
Like, kind of just conceived from the ground up to be seamless. It's incredible. I was actually watching for one of the things that I don't know why this time, but John Rhys Davies is, you know, he had like a double that was smaller than him to do Gimli. And so I was sort of looking for shots where it's like, oh, we only see his back here. That must be the double. I mean, I couldn't do that long because I get so swept up in the story. Like, you can't watch this movie clinically. I guess unless you're a soulless sociopath or something, like you're going to be on board for this so much. But like every once in a while, I was like, oh, I wonder if that was actually John Rhys. I love John Rhys Davies. By the way.
He's great.
This was a great addition to a great career. He's still alive, right? He is.
Yes, he is. He was just in Dial of Destiny a couple of years ago.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So haven't seen it. Probably won't, but
one thing they said is like, if you want to sell like this character you need John Rhys Davies. Like, cause like he's got to be funny, but you also got to take him seriously. And like, there's not a lot of actors who can thread that line like as well as a John Rhys Davies, right?
Guy rocks a beard as well as anybody I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Ever.
And of course the whole cast is a knockout, right? Like they just
Perfect.
They did so great. One of the biggest stories, right, is that what's his name? Stuart Townsend.
Yeah. Originally Aragorn and
was originally Aragorn.
Very late in the process.
They were like 2 weeks into shooting, like when they were like, he's too young. And they're absolutely right. Like, no shade to this guy. Like, you know, he was kind of like a hot young actor at the time. And you can see why, you know, they would bring on someone like him, but it's immediately, you have to stand there. They has to do scenes with like Ian McKellen and seem like he belongs in that scene with him, you know, and that's tough for any young actor to do no matter how good they are. Right. So it's like they bring in Viggo Mortensen and.
Well, this movie makes huge stars out of people too, right?
It does. Like, it makes huge stars out of people.
I had seen Viggo Mortensen and stuff before, but like this makes him a household name. Orlando Bloom, I'd never seen him before. That makes him a household name.
Yep. Absolutely.
You know, really, I mentioned this in the stuff I wrote up pre-production wise. Like they cast Liv Tyler because they wanted a Hollywood star in this movie. And I was like, oh yeah, she's the biggest star in this movie. And at the time, right? I mean, you know, she's in Armageddon. Like she top-lined a couple of things, but I wouldn't have thought of her as a Hollywood star. But yeah, she's probably at the time the most famous person in this movie. And she's not even in it that much. We see more of her in the next two. Yeah. But like, it's this incredible cast, and like all these big names get kicked around, you know, for Gandalf, for example, you know, David Bowie wanted to play that part, and they're like, nope, this movie is too cool for David Bowie.
Yeah. Also, David Bowie's too. It's sort of like, you know,
David Bowie's an established persona. It works in Labyrinth, but it doesn't necessarily work for this.
It's like Taylor Swift wanting to be in the Hunger Games. It's like you're too. It will outsize the movie. Like people won't pay attention to the movie. They're paying attention that David Bowie is in Lord of the Rings. I mean, one of the famous stories, right, is Sean Connery turned it down. Right, he was in this run. He turned down this. He turned down The Matrix. Right, he turned down both. And he was like, I thought they were terrible. Yeah. So the next thing I think is terrible, I'm just going to take it because obviously I'm wrong. And that was League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It's the last movie he ever made. Just
the movie that made him retire and never want to act.
Yeah. I mean, all the people that they kind of bring up for the most part, you know, Anthony Hopkins, Patrick Stewart, you know, Christopher Plummer, you know, Patrick McGowan would have been great. You know, that's like one of those people I think would have been awesome in it. I mean, nobody would have been better than McKellen at doing it, obviously, you know.
McKellen is so good in this movie. It's like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, it is one of the greatest performances of all time. And like, just brings this like groundedness to this character and just has it like, Ian McKellen gets it like 100%. Like he was born to play this right. I mean, I'd seen him in other things before.
He had just been an X-Men.
Yeah, he just been an X-Men. I like that movie, Apt Pupil, made by a terrible human being.
Terrible human being.
But a very good movie.
And X-Men also made by the same terrible human being.
Yep. Singer. But like, I mean, I was not, and even the first time I saw it, I was just kind of blown away by how good. I mean, literally, there's nobody else I could imagine. Any one of them could have done it, right? Like Anthony Hopkins could have been a perfectly fine Gandalf. Yeah. Christopher Lee, who they said was too old, which you know, Christopher Lee's old. What are you going to do? He lived a long time after this movie. He's great as Saruman as well. Yeah. But like, no one could do this like Ian McKellen. It is like the perfect choice. And I mean, it's just one of those miraculous things that kind of surrounds. I feel like there's a lot of stuff. And now I do feel like maybe this is my religion. Maybe this movie is because there's like so many things that are just like miracles, right? Like they could have gone somebody, they could have been a 9, but instead they're a 12.
Yeah.
Exactly, you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. And even like Elijah Wood, right, as Frodo, who was obviously a huge child star, right? But this movie, you know, kind of makes it so he doesn't turn into like a joke, right? It's like he was very close to me. Like he did a couple bad movies. North, which obviously was this huge like catastrophe of a movie. He kind of was in the wilderness for a little bit, and then he does this. And I think, you know, even for me, I'm like, Elijah Wood, like, you know, whatever. And then he's so good in this. You know, Sean Astin as Sam, obviously, like, perfect casting. You know, getting people like, you know, Billy Boyd and Dominic Monaghan, who were nobodies at the time, you know, but perfect for their roles. You know, Hugo Weaving as Elrond. Yeah. Ian Holm. Kate Blanchett as Galadriel. You know, all these kind of things. And of course, like Circus isn't really in this movie very much. He's a little bit of a voice in it. That's it.
I forgot how little we see, and that might actually be another thing I really like about this one. Like I think the other two are a little Gollum heavy for me.
I mean, it's such a great performance though. Like we'll talk about that when we get to the other ones. But I think so. We're talking about cast. Let's get into it now instead of wait till we get to the scenes where when he shows up. I truly think that the linchpin secret sauce to this movie just being as nonstop great as it is the choice to cast Sean Bean as Boromir, because Boromir is a very important character in the sense of the story and the sort of like scope of these movies, which is you need to establish the counterpoint to Aragorn, right? You need to establish the person who is a man, as like Aragorn is, but he's also a vessel to understand the power of the ring and the danger of the ring, where it can go, where it can be. But it's also a role it's not a villain role, right? It's actually it's a very heroic role, right? But you have to have all that conflict and all of that sort of,
Well, he's very intimidating when he needs to be.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, intimidating when he needs to be.
But
soft when he needs to be, like that moment where they're on the hill and he's teaching the hobbits how to fight and they like tackle him and stuff. It's such a sweet little moment. And then that ending scene with him, it is the key to selling, the Aragorn character turn, right? Where he goes from being like, I don't want this, to like, now I need to do this, right? And it's so important. I think Bean is like unbelievable in this movie. And like, it's just one of those performances where it's easy to just be like, well, he's in the first movie for half of it, so like, how important is he? But I think like, to me, watching these movies, like obviously all the main cast, it's vital that they are as good as they are. But I'm saying for this movie in particular, like it's such a linchpin performance to me. And I think he's just so wonderful in it.
Well, he kind of embodies the entire morality, or like, which is an important thing in this overall story too. And yeah, I agree with that. I guess I knew Sean Bean at this point from, I used to like the Jack Ryan trilogy. He plays the villain in Patriot Games. He's like an IRA terrorist that's going after Harrison Ford.
Famous villain.
He was very young at the time. It was like
GoldenEye as well.
Yeah, GoldenEye also. So he does these spy movies essentially, and he's he's got an accent. He's got this kind of chiseled European sort of look about him that makes him good for that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just the moment where he and Aragorn kind of interact for the first time with the broken shards of the sword.
Yeah,
love that. Forgot how good that was.
Yeah.
There's so many amazing moments like that, and I remembered all of them. Right, like very little in this movie surprises me anymore. There's a couple of things where I was like, oh, I don't remember them doing that. But it's like, you can't even like, if you just wanted to like chronicle the good scenes, the moments, the iconic sort of things in this movie, you can't even do it. There's too much.
Yeah. And like we talked about, like this movie is the reason why at the end of movie 3, you cry 7 times, right? Like that's the reason. If this movie isn't what it is, like, even if it's, this is a 10 out of 10, if it was a 7.5 out of 10, the last movie wouldn't hit the way that it hits because of everything they set up here, right? And we can just start from the very beginning, right? Which is the prologue, which I think is was the first moment even for me watching it, sitting in that theater in 2001 and being like because you're waiting for it to stumble, right? Like there's so much they have to do in this first 10 minutes of the movie, right? And you're starting with like a voiceover and a prologue. These are all recipes sometimes for a disaster.
Yeah, it's
right?
like epic fantasy movie.
Yeah, epic fantasy movie. A bunch of characters you don't know, a bunch of situations you don't know, a bunch of words
silly
you don't know.
Silly sounding names. Yeah, words that are kind of ridiculous. I mean, that's what fantasy is, right? There's a moment in Gentlemen Broncos where
your favorite movie?
My favorite movie of all time, Jermaine Clement's character, and that's a sci-fi writer, and he's just like giving a seminar on naming your characters for like fantasy and sci-fi stories, and like a lot of those names sound like Tolkien names, right?
Yeah.
But we kind of, I don't know what it is. Like, again, something miraculous, something magical. We just buy into it right away.
Yeah.
Like,
also, Kate Blanchett doesn't hurt. Kate Blanchett doing the voiceover doesn't hurt either.
Sure.
Yeah.
But, this could have been a text crawl, but instead we get like, I think one of the greatest prologues in movie history, right? Like I am sold 30 seconds into this. We get like hundreds of years of history. We get like this whole epic, we understand what kinds of characters populate this fantasy world. It's all just laid out very clearly, very interestingly, and in a way that like never turns you off. It just makes you want to see more. Like, okay, I'm on board. This is it. This is the MacGuffin, because it really is. It's a MacGuffin story, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's like we're in right away.
Yeah, and even starting with that first couple lines of, you know, voiceover over black, right? The world has changed. I feel it in the air, you know, you know, whatever. And like the none now live who remember it. And then that score, the ring theme coming up, you know, and then like the words coming up, and not the Fellowship of the Ring, the Lord of the Rings, right? We are giving you, this is the beginning of this 3 movies, right?
And I love when the other title, the subtitle drops later, like the moment, I mean, it's just little things like that, right? Like here is where you put that title on screen. It just, it all hits so hard.
And, you know, speaking in the time and the era, you know, CG was obviously a thing. It was in movies, but it was not really a reliable thing yet. Outside some directors, like if you're seeing a Spielberg movie, you were like, okay, I know the CG is gonna be fine, you know, or you know, Cameron or whoever.
Cameron can do it at this point.
But like a year before, I think The Mummy Returns had come out or whatever, and the CG in that is abysmal, right? It's horrible CGI. Battle scenes with
the one with the rock with the scorpion
at the very
body?
end, yeah. That's obviously one of the worst effects in history of movies. But even stuff before that, like showing battles, like ancient battle scenes, and it looks like a cartoon. It looks like a bad cartoon, you know. And that first shot where you get the close-ups, right? You get your first look at that fucking unbelievable orc makeup, right? Which is just
everything,
still
the armor, like you can see all the details on all of that here, and it's like, okay, this is like someone put some time and thought into this. This is not just like plug it in, you know.
Yeah, but that first shot where you get like the 2 armies clashing, and all the elves' swords do that like swipey thing down the line. And I'm like, this looks good. Like, obviously these aren't all real people. I know they can't all, there's like thousands of people here, you know, and then
it still looks good. That's the thing. If you do it right, that's like when people dump on CGI, it's like CGI is just a tool, you know, and if you do it right, and if you put the thought into it, and you detail it in such a way where it's not just like copy, paste, it can hold up. It can look really, I mean, there's moments in Jurassic Park that are obviously CGI that hold up, that look great.
Yeah.
Terminator 2, that was the first movie that really, talking about Cameron, The Abyss, I mean, those movies still look real good.
They do look real good. And of course, there are little moments here and there in these where you're like, I can tell this was made in 1999, whenever they were filming it and doing the effects. Like, but for the most part, all the stuff that really matters looks really, really good. And it's like, that moment is great. And then just to take us through, right? Like, the ring gets destroyed. It destroys Sauron. Like, we don't get the whole story, right? We cut to like him walking with the ring on him. The ring betrays him. We get to Gollum. We get to Bilbo, you know, and then we're just we're like, you know, basically at the beginning of our movie, right? But it portrays a lot of things, right? The ring is corrupting, you know, the ring has a will of its own, like a mind of its own, right? But it didn't intend to be where it is right now, right? Like the fact that a hobbit has it is not its intent, right? And also the scale of time is crazy. We're talking about like from the beginning of the prologue, we're talking about like 5,500 years. So that's like an insane amount of time, right? And also you're seeding the fact that the elves are immortal, right? Because you've got 2 characters in the very beginning you're going to see again a little bit later in the movie, right? So you're seeing all that stuff very, very early. And again, it's just like a great like 10-minute mini movie, you know, like to be like, this tells you everything you need to know about where you're at. And having read the books, like it really is enough to get you into where you need to be, right? And then we are given this grace of, right, this like, I mean, it's like 25 minutes, right? Of just like whimsical
Bilbo just
fun
around the Shire. I love it. And I love
with some melancholy. He still has the melancholy in there. He's making sure you know that there is something more happening, but it's not the overriding, right? We're going to flip it. Once Bilbo leaves, we flip it around, right? It becomes like a little bit of whimsy, and then like but there's a lot more menace. But right now, it's a ton of whimsy and a little bit of menace. Sorry, go ahead. What you're going to say?
Yeah, well, just like the Bilbo stuff, right? Like there is, I mean, right away we're talking about like this epic history, and then we're talking about this character who is like facing down the fact that he's getting old, and you know, he maybe doesn't want to, he wants to go out on his own terms, kind of thing. And I was really moved by that even the first time I saw it, and I had no idea where the story was going, and I knew it was Frodo's story and not Bilbo's story. But like this movie is so grounded in these very human things, and you know, the older I get, the more I feel like Bilbo, and the less I feel like Frodo, which is fucking sad. But you know, even seeing this as a 19-year-old, I was like, oh yeah, I hope we get to see this character again. You know, I hope he's not just kind of going off into the wild like he wants to do and just sort of disappearing. But like there is that mixed up with, you know, this very Jackson, this very earthy sort of humor, this almost campy, like the stuff with the hobbits and the like, you know, just what the Shire is like, and these kind of simple folk who you know, their humor is sort of bawdy, and they're always like smoking weed. I remember seeing that as a 19-year-old. Like, look at him smoking weed, and he blew a ship, you know, stuff like that. And it really just kind of draws you into this world in this very, very beautiful way. And it is, you know, it's enough like stuff that we know. It's enough like stuff because there is a very sort of solemn version of this movie, right? Like, you know, where you have this epic text, this book that, you know, it's like the Bible or something, you know, there's like all these characters and all this history and years and years and years of stuff. And you could treat that with such gravity and seriousness. And Jackson does that, but it's also kind of intermixed with, like, again, this very human, you know, the Bilbo story of abandoning his family to just sort of die on his own terms, and also just this very silly stuff, you know, these little character asides, what's it, Farmer Maggot or whatever?
Farmer Maggot,
I think is
keeps selling his crops. That's him. But I just love that, like, part of his big thing is like, I don't want to deal with these freaking relatives anymore. They won't stop bothering me. And I'm like, man,
that's like sitcom shit.
I feel you so much, man. Like,
it fits and works so perfectly.
I just want to go walk into the woods so people don't bother me anymore. Like, I totally get it, you know. But I will say that part of that is because Jackson. This is part of Jackson really understanding and really staying true to the Tolkien stuff, because the Tolkien stuff is very whimsical. Like, you know, there's a part in the near the beginning when Frodo and Sam first start kind of doing their part of the journey in Still in the Shire, where like he talks about like when they're falling asleep, that a little fox walks up and kind of looks at them and considers like, what are they doing here? Like, why are these two hobbits out here? Like, that shit's like in the books, you know? So it's like this idea of like, it should be whimsical and fun. Like, this is also, it's again what they're fighting for, right? Is this place, is this idea of this place that is a place you can feel safe, a place you can, you know, where you can live a simple, normal life, you know? And I do love that you get that Ian Holm voiceover while he's kind of writing, while you're kind of experiencing what the Shire is, right? And it's not...
Yeah, he's telling the story of the hobbits. And so, and like, it's introducing us to what a hobbit is and what their life is like. And that's important because, as you said, right, that is what they're fighting for. I mean, they are the ones that we are the most sympathetic to, even though, you know, they're not human. There are humans in this world, but, you know, this it's very cynical about men in some sense, right? Like,
yes.
Men take power, seize the ring, and want to do, you know, terrible things with it. Whereas hobbits just want to be hobbits, you know, they just want to live this sort of simple life and enjoy nature and each other's company.
Yeah.
And it's really, what'd you say? It was like 25 minutes?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. You know, this is an epic fantasy movie, but we get that, you know, and I can't think of any other, you know, like, we don't get to spend time on Tatooine in A New Hope, right?
No,
like
not before something terrible happens.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, exactly.
We're murdering Luke's family members like real early in that movie, you know, and I don't mean to just, it's not a one-to-one thing.
But it's good. These are reference points. These are reference points, you know, to go with these other movies, you know, and like, I think
this is, you know, it's so much more than a story. It's like a universe that you have to live in and you have to understand. And these things do it so well, but in a way where it's not just like, you know, a wall of text where it's like, this is what this all is. It's like you get to just sort of experience it the way they would experience it. You know, the humor, the gentleness of it, the way their houses look. There's a great moment, you know, just these little things like Gandalf walks into Bilbo's house and he hits his head on the ceiling.
Yeah, I wrote that down as a
love that stuff.
Little slapstick moment, you know, where he's like, this guy's big and this house is real small, you know? I just love stuff like, you know, when Gandalf sets the fireworks off and the kids celebrate, right? And he gives that little like side smile to Frodo, where first he looks all grumpy and then he gives a little side smile, you know, and I like love that little mischief in Gandalf, right? That there's
one of the things I definitely forgot was Sam's like ballad about him from later on about the fireworks.
Yeah.
God, I almost cried.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I know what's going to happen to Gandalf. Like I didn't know it when I saw this. So I was like, oh man, he's dead. That sucks.
Yeah.
A year later, I found out that, he's coming back, but not to spoil this for anybody.
I think we're okay. But I'm going to say the music in here, again, we'll talk about the music as it comes up. The concerning hobbits stuff, like the Shire music is so beautiful. It's one of those things where when a great composer locks in with a movie, where you could close your eyes never having seen the movie and you could picture what the movie looks like. You know what I mean? Like it just feels earthy and rural and, you know, real and whimsical and sweet, you know, like it feels like that, you know, it feels like hobbits, you know, in that way where you can't really just put a finger on it, but that's what it feels like. And, you know,
and that's true of everything, right?
Like, and this motif will come up again. And when this motif comes up again, you as a person get emotional about it because it makes you remember this thing that you saw earlier, right? You're there with the characters, right? You're experiencing that thought too in your head. We're like, oh, I miss like the green. I miss like the simpleness of that, you know, now we're in this like terrible spot. Yeah. But you were saying about you were going to say something about the music. Sorry.
Oh yeah, well, like, you know, I think he composed like 100 different leitmotif themes, like related to various aspects of it, because that's how big this trilogy is, right?
Yeah.
And every one of them is perfectly suitable to what it is. So, you know, the Mines of Moria might be such a great sequence. Which
we'll talk about it. Yeah, I think the Mines of Moria sequence is like the greatest sequence in any movie ever. That is really like what my feeling is about it. But
it might be the greatest action sequence.
Yeah,
the greatest sustained. I mean, starting with the swamp creature.
Yeah, like the Leviathan thing. Yeah.
You know, and right through the end of that, Gandalf's death or whatever.
Yeah,
all of it. It's just, I mean, it's all of the things that you love about like adventure movie, like Raiders of the Lost Ark and all of those. It's all kind of in one place.
Yeah.
But that's far off. But again, even that kind of has its own theme, like the destroyed home of the dwarves, right?
Yeah.
Gets its own sort of moment in the score. Like you said, right? He does that so we can come back to this stuff and so we can continually like we have this other association with all the characters in all these places. Like, you know, I was kind of saying it a couple minutes ago, like you really live in this world. It's so important to this story and to making this work that you really do feel like all of these things as if you've actually been there. If you have actually experienced them, so you understand what the characters are fighting for, and that's what makes all those other things so meaningful. And it's like we build these connections through so many, the production design and the score and you know, the differences between the characters. Like we very quickly in this movie, we know what an elf is, we know what a hobbit is, we know what dwarves are, and they are, you know, they're all fantasy archetypes, right? But this is a very particular type, and he's so good at establishing things without being like, you know, putting up something on screen like this is a dwarf, right? Like these are, you know what I mean? Like it's,
absolutely, it's
all like very, very organic, and it doesn't all. I mean, the Shire stuff is great, but really we only do that, particularly in this movie, with the hobbits. All the rest of them just kind of show up, you know, they just become part of the story, and it's like, okay, elves are this, and dwarves are this, and humans are this. And
just talking about Tolkien for a second, they are archetypes. It's crazy to think that he created the archetypes. Like, that's the thing that's insane, right? Is like these archetypes that are just in every fantasy thing.
Yeah.
This one English dude just created them in like the 60s or whatever. Yeah. You know, it's like, it's crazy that that's the case, you know? But, and it's also the thing too about this movie is its focus on Bilbo in the beginning, who's a character we will only see one other time, you know, after this in this movie, is so important because I think the movie also wants to get across to you that there is the generations before, you know, Frodo's generation basically has kind of passed the buck down constantly until it couldn't be passed down anymore, right? And you can feel that on Bilbo when he's like, you know, the fact that he's like he's kind of understands at a certain point that he's put some sort of terrible burden onto his, like, you know, he's not his son, but his son, his ward, you know, this person he cares the most about probably. He's kind of foisted this upon him. Like his, for lack of a better term, like addiction almost to this ring is now being passed to his kin, and it has to happen. Like, and there's nothing he can do about it, and because he's gone too far, and I think that the pain, this is why you cast Ian Holm to do something like this, right? Is like what he's able to convey, the pain he's able to convey in those moments where he's really struggling is like really important, I think, for the emotional core of the movie.
There's also a sense with this character that, like, Bilbo has lived a life, right? And we maybe that's why we'll get to the Hobbit movies when we get to the Hobbit movies. But it's like, even just in this one, like Bilbo's adventures and all the stuff that he's done, the fact that there is this larger world and years of experiences. There's this great moment where they're out in the woods and they see the statues of the trolls, and that's something that he's talked about. And so we're like, they are recalling stuff, and then we're recalling him. Like it really does feel like we've kind of lived in Middle Earth, and it all feels like, again, organic is the word that I want to use, right? Yeah. Like, because these are also so much about storytelling and like passing legends down. Everything is legends and like these mysterious things like that we are going to go out and then see. Yeah. And it's like, he's seen them all before. And like, we feel like we've kind of almost been along for the ride with him, even though it's just a couple of things, mentioned, pretty casually in dialogue. And yet it all feels like tangible.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And like, the fact that we spend as much time as we do at that party, and it's not.
What a great scene.
It's all character based, like we get the smoking scene, which is great, the
stuff with the relatives.
Two old friends getting like, stoned out of their minds.
Not important in the story at all, but
no.
We're kind of on board for it for a little while.
And I love Ian Holm playing drunk. I think he's so good at it, and like that little moment where he's, that woman comes over and she has all her kids, and he goes, my, you have been productive or whatever. And he just does like a thing with his mouth or whatever. It's just like this random little moment, which I think is so funny. And this party, obviously, it gives us important stuff, right? We've already spent time with Frodo, right? Frodo spent time with Gandalf. We've gotten a little bit of like, also people talking about Frodo. So we kind of have understanding about him a little bit. But here we meet Merry and Pippin, who are getting to little hijinks adventures, with each other, and not quite, being too good at it either. So we get that established very quickly. And we get very quickly that Sam is like sweet, but kind of shy and kind of not sure of himself, right? We get that very quickly, right?
And then he loves Frodo.
He loves Frodo. Yes, absolutely. And he also loves Rosie Cotton, right? So we get that as well. And, they're friends because Frodo like pushes him, to dance with her and everything, and then laughs, and everyone's happy and clapping. We get the fun fireworks stuff, like the dragon firework and all that stuff. And we get the great speech from Ian Holm, obviously. They're like, I don't know half of you half as well as I would like, and I know more than half of you half as well you deserve, or whatever he says. Great little moment. And I love that he's a little scamp, right? He's pulling a little trick on him. He puts his ring on thing. He doesn't have to do that. He could just do a speech, walk off, and then leave, after he left the party. But he wants to play a little funny joke on everybody, and and then we get, I think, we get that really great scene between him and Gandalf where he has to give up the ring, and you really see how it's affecting him, right? And what I love about this is like, and something I didn't really think about when I first saw the movie, because like, it's Lord of the Rings. I know that the ring is something. Everyone knows that the ring is something. This idea that Gandalf doesn't know, right? He doesn't know. He's like, there's something weird going on, but I don't know what the weird thing is. You know what I mean? Like, this ring shouldn't let you look like you're 50 when you're 111 years old. Like, this is like, something is going on, I like that a lot, and how it builds that slowly, right? And this idea of like, McKellen is so good at playing these moments on his face, like not even speaking, just the way his face reacts to certain little things is so good, but he's trying to protect Frodo, right? Frodo comes in, we have the scene where like, he kind of they put the ring away. He won't touch the ring. Right. And like, as soon as Bilbo leaves, right, we kind of, the kind of paradigm shifts, right? We go from the whimsy starts to retreat, and the kind of dread starts to come in, a lot more. And then we get like, just, which is crazy, we get these 3 shots in a row that are like, we get Mordor, we get like Barad-dûr, the Fortress of Barad-dûr, and we get the Sauron theme, like the dun, 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 that theme. And then we see Mount Doom explode, right? We get the Shire Baggins thing, obviously. And then we see Gondor for like 3 seconds. And it's like, this thing is just, the whole world opens up in like a matter of, I don't know, a minute. We spent 25 minutes in this little green area, and then all of a sudden, like, we see these two giant locations.
When the ring wraiths start like spilling out of the gate, that's that scene, or is that a little bit later?
No, they come out because once he says Shire Baggins, they come charging out. And they head for the Shire, and then we see Gandalf going to Minas Tirith to like research the ring. Basically, we don't know that's what he's doing, but that's where he is. And then very quickly we're back, and we get the is it secret, is it safe scene. And I think one of these things that is just great storytelling is the way they sort of reveal what the ring is, right? Throwing it into the fire, I love that I always burn into my brain is when Gandalf is not looking at him and he's like, oh, there's nothing there. And then when he says, wait a second, and the way Ian McKellen's face changes is just, and he doesn't, it's not even like that scene in the Council of Elrond where you can see his face visibly like sink when Frodo like volunteers to take the ring. It's just like this subtle.
That's a great moment too, though.
Oh, it's an amazing moment, right? But this thing where it's like this subtle moment, and just hearing like, me and McKellen say the ring poem, or whatever, it's just like one of these things. It's just very powerful. Great actors saying these big things, and it just works, and then it's Sam, right? Sam is spying outside the window, and again we park. I only bring this in because we park for a moment to have a little bit of whimsy, right? A little bit of like humor, a little bit of breath, right? First, it starts with just, Frodo immediately is like, okay, I can stay off the road. I can stay out of sight. Like I'll go. Let's do it, right? And it's more Gandalf's like, basically like, holy shit, like I cannot believe, like it's just he's where he's like impressed, or he's like, I've known hobbits for however long, and you guys still end up surprising me. It's like nice to him for a couple minutes, and then Sam thing, which is funny, but we, important because we need this. It's a linchpin to the story. Right.
Yeah, sure. And it's a very cliched. It's a buddy comedy thing. I'm going to tag along with you. But there is a gravity to it here. And it's, again, it's that balance I was talking about before, where we've seen some of these things before. They are in some sense cliches, but also even at this point early, and this is the first hour of the movie, first 40 minutes or something. We already know these characters so well that we know there's more to it than that, right? Like it feels, again, natural and organic and what you would expect to happen and what sort of needs to happen at this point. And it doesn't feel contrived. This is not just like the screenwriter has to get these two people together. It's like, of course, that's what's going to happen at this point.
Of course. And we get, we don't hear him say it, right? But it's a very important moment because Sam will bring it up 2 more times in the movie, which is this thing that Gandalf says to him, which is like, don't you lose him, Samwise Gamgee, or whatever. Don't you leave him, Samwise Gamgee, right? And when it's said the last time, it will make me cry when they're in the boat together. But
what a great scene that is.
It's such a great scene. But I want to tell you this: we get to meet Christopher Lee next. We get to meet Saruman next, and once again, we are in this era of time. I mean, obviously, we talked about what's his name in The Frighteners,
John Astin.
No, not John Astin. What the fuck is his name? The guy from Reanimator.
Jeffrey Combs.
Peter Jackson obviously fucking just loves low budget horror movies, right? Because that's Christopher Lee is a low budget horror king. You know what I mean?
I was like, is he talking about old people? Because John Astin. Anyway,
no.
I get what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? And it's also a time where all of these guys who grew up watching those movies are now directors themselves. Because Christopher Lee is he's in Sleepy Hollow. Then he's in this, and then he's in Star Wars in like a quick succession of time. You know what I mean? Like it is like he becomes one of the highest grossing actors of all time. McKellen is the same way, right? With the X-Men and then this and then whatever. But like, Christopher Lee is so good in these movies in general, like in all of these movies. But he's so good in this movie, and
He's so good that this movie sells an old man wizard fight, and it's like one of the coolest scenes ever.
Yeah. I love when movies do shit like this. I mean, obviously, like, it doesn't happen that much, but when you have like people you don't expect to be having like crazy fights, it's just so cool to see.
I love the moment where he's got Gandalf kind of spinning on the floor and all that stuff there. Like, when he imprisons him at the top of the tower and everything. It's just like the way it's staged and the way it's shot is just, it's awesome.
And the way you slowly got to clue into like something's going on, because like this guy is not being like an altruistic wizard type, you know, right now. Because the thing about the love of the halfling's leaf has clearly slowed your mind or whatever to Gandalf. And one thing that Jackson does, which I think is and I really only noticed this time because I was really looking for this kind of stuff this time around, was that the close-ups of Ian McKellen of Gandalf are normal close-up with like a long lens, right? It's like you can tell the normal close-up, the close-up you see and you go, this is what a close-up looks like in a movie. Even if you don't think it in your head, you don't feel off-put by it. All the close-ups of Christopher Lee are like those Jackson wide angle. The camera's obviously like this close to his face, and it's all like really upsetting and like weird and kind of off-kilter and off-putting. And obviously it's intentional because he's trying to communicate that the fact that like something's wrong with this guy, right? But just those tricks that we've seen in the other movies are here still, right? Like in those type of moments. We get old man wizard fight and then Gandalf up, and then we get, one of the most iconic shots in all of the movies is coming up next, and there's a few of them in this movie, but one of those things I think Jackson really does level up in this movie is like, we talked about how crazy his camera is, how like frenetic his camera is. He really in this one is like, no, I'm going to create like almost like still painting frames that are going to be like shots that you will remember. And that shot of the four hobbits underneath the tree with the Nazgul like on the road.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
It's such like, it's just an indelible image. It's just an image that like you could put it on a painting and you'd be like, yep, piece of art. Like that's what it is.
Well, just the way the menace he imbues into those characters, like it looks very similar to, it's a while since we've talked about the Frighteners. We're kind of taking a break between episodes.
Yeah.
But what's the villain in that movie? The like Grim Reaper looking.
Grim Reaper. Oh God, the killer. I can't remember his last name now.
Well, I mean, it's
Jake Busey. You're talking about
Jake Busey's character, like when he's in the full on. We see him in the opening scene, right? When he's chasing them through the house. It's a very similar visual look to that, and it's 100 times more terrifying here. And I'm not sure. It's like the same sort of cloak and the same, like blank.
Yeah, but it's all real. Like, that's the thing too. Like that like the Frighteners thing was like CG for the most part. This is like you can feel it. You can feel like the cloth with the armor and like the way that like the horse's feet have like blood coming out of them.
Sure,
and
these like real imposing sort of low angles, like it looks huge, and it's part of that is just the hobbits being small and everything.
And the sound design, like the scream is so chilling. It's like it's Fran Walsh. It's like they took her scream and they like adapted it into this Nazgul scream, which is
that's fun. I didn't know that.
Which is a great little tidbit, But the sound design is so great, and also just like the way it's shot, like that stretch shot that they do when he's looking down the road to like that again, just something where like the way the tree comes over the road. It's just like is this is real? Like I don't understand how this is a real thing, But you look at the behind the scenes stuff, and it's just real. It just was there, And the way that push happens, and then you just feel it because you've also seen them like coming into the Shire. And it's, you can tell everyone is very scared of them, right? And so you just get this, like, nature to it. And the way, like, the bugs all start running away from it. Like, what crazy,
I mean, there are moments in this that are as scary as any horror movie I've ever seen, right? And Jackson hasn't really done scary horror movies. He's done horror comedies. He's done kind of like over-the-top sort of gross-out stuff. But like just the menace of these characters, and later on, as we talked about it, the orcs as well. But it's just like, I mean, it's all of these different elements, right? It's the sound, it's the production design, it's the costume, it's the way they're shot, it's the way these things are choreographed, right? Where they are in the shot. We're not just cutting shot, reverse shot, but like we're seeing them together. It's really creepy, and I'm not generally creeped out by movies. And this is a PG-13 fantasy movie. This is not a horror flick, but like I'm kind of like recoiling the entire time. And I've seen it before. I've seen it a bunch of times before. And it's like, this shit's terrifying.
It is very scary. And also, you know, you have great performances happening as well. So they're communicating how scary it is as well. And then when they run, this is a bugaboo of mine with modern filmmaking, so I'm gonna bring it up here. They're running through the woods. It's at night, right? We're in the dead of night. They're running through the woods. Yet there is contrast between the people who are running through the woods and the woods, the night sky. There is ambiance. There is atmosphere. You can tell the background and the people aren't merging into one weird gray blob. There is just so much on next level filmmaking happening in this movie. Even when the colors are rich and beautiful, like even when it's a serious scene, rich, beautiful colors, right? You know, everything everything feels like it's been blocked out and thought out properly, right? It never feels like the hobbits are being chased and the person that's chasing them is like not running their fastest to try to catch them because they just wanted the scene to get done. You know what I mean? Like, you know, there is just such artistry going on here, and it's just a little moment, but it's just one of those things where I feel like, you know, there's been this move, especially with digital photography, to like, well, we don't have to light it as much because you can see more stuff. And it's like, yeah, but this is what the night's supposed to look like in a movie. Like, it's not supposed to look like just no contrast darkness. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so like, it just looks great.
It's expressionistic darkness. It's German expressionism. It's early Mario Bava kind of stuff. Yeah, you know, it's like Jackson does, I think, have that background in horror. And like, this feels, you know, it's super gothic. It's like got that kind of mythical horror thing about it rather than this modern horror thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which he's also pretty good at.
Yes, 100%. Then we go in these things where it's just a little moment where it's like Jackson or Walsh or Boyens, or all three of them kind of just being like, we want to kind of get across that the Nazgul don't like the water, but we're not going to like have anybody ever say it. You know, no one's ever, but there's a reason why the horse doesn't jump towards the ferry. You know what I mean? Because like, they don't like the water, dude. And like, you see that later, right, with Arwen, right, in that other scene, but it's like, this, you know, people have said to me, I remember even back then, like, why didn't it just jump onto the ferry? And I was like, or go after him on the water. I'm like, well, they don't really like the water because stuff. And it's like, they don't care that you don't know that. There's like, that's the way they are. So that's the way it is. Like, you just deal with it.
Let me tell you about these demon horses.
Yeah, exactly. They don't like the water at all. They just don't like it. So then we move into like, first like hobbits in a human world. And Jackson now is really doing a little bit of his like old school, like, camera's kind of swaying and moving and it's low angled and the lenses are real wide because we're really trying to unsettle you. Like, this is not, the hobbits are in a place where they don't belong, you know, and they're kind of above their station. They don't know what they're doing, right? Love this set as well. Like, you know, the prancing pony like set, you know, and the way, I just say, dude, the way that the camera pans up that wall of Bree and reveals Bree, you know, like only a little bit of that is real, unless it is digitally extended, but it's like,
and we spend so little time
so here. Little time.
This is like you feel like you've lived in this location. We barely see it in this movie. You know, and it's like quintessential fantasy stuff, right? Like, we're going to a tavern, we're running into, you know, we're getting a quest here. It's all, you know, this is like the ultimate D&D game or something like that.
Absolutely, yeah. You meet the stranger in the bar that will lead you, will help you on the rest of your quest, you know, kind of thing.
But, you know, I've seen this scene in so many other films and so many other places, and it never feels as organic and real and like this is an actual bar that people go to and, you know, share stories of their adventures together. Like, you know, it's a cliche, but it's done in a way that makes it feel kind of new again, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know,
you ever played an RPG video game, like you've been to a place just like this, but it's never kind of felt like you were there in the sense that this movie puts you there.
Absolutely not. And we still manage to get a little bit of a fun moment, right? Where, you know, the Merry Pippin realizing that the beer comes in pints, you know, like it's like a little fun moment, even though it leads to like a really big, huge moment, right?
I'm getting one of those. Yeah.
Which is, you know, the Frodo, you know, kind of slipping, you know, and falling in the ring, falling on his finger. And another, like, obviously,
what
like,
a great shot
really iconic shot, right? Which is Frodo on the ground, his hand sticking up in the ring, sort of big in the foreground, falling towards his finger, right? And we get the first sense of like what it's like to put on this thing, you know, what the person sees when they put on it. And obviously Frodo's seeing a whole other level probably than Bilbo ever saw when he put the ring on, you know, but we get the eye, you know, like, you know, and then we get like the black speech and the, you know, the very deep voiced I see you thing. And then we get our Strider. I should say we do get he gets such a visual introduction when the barman's talking about him. You know, he's like, he's one of them rangers or whatever. And you see him just the pipe and just his eyes light up under his hood or whatever. And then we get our Strider time, our Vigo time. And Vigo is so good in these movies. Like, it feels like rote to say it, right? But like, I don't think anyone quite could have played it this way. He just has such like a soul to the way he plays it. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just him as a person bringing onto the screen or whatever, but there's just such like a soul and like you can feel how old he is, you know, even though like, you know, even though he's just like a normal, like probably 35-year-old guy at this point, or however old he is at this point when he's making this movie.
Like prematurely grizzled, yes. I guess is a way of describing him. I think it's also important, you know, like having Viggo Mortensen here and it not being a Tom Cruise, a Brad Pitt, a Harrison Ford. You know what I mean? I mean, we've seen him before. It's not like he's just this unknown actor that came out of nowhere. But, you know, we don't know him well enough where, like, we're talking about David Bowie and how he would have overshadowed the character of Gandalf. Viggo Mortensen is a perfect choice because he doesn't do that, right? No. It's a perfect casting choice, and he's exactly what this character needs to be. I mean, it's hard now, right? Like you see him in other stuff, and it's like, that's Aragorn. You know, like you can't really escape it. But yeah, I'm sure he doesn't mind. His kids, he signed on to this because I think it was his son that really loved those books. So you know, he did a cool thing for his kid, and then became, as you said, an expert in it himself. But like. It's a great choice because he's got all the qualities of a classic Hollywood action hero without any of the baggage of the ones that we know and the ones that we're familiar with. So he works perfectly. Yeah. And then it's like, because like a lot of the, you know, like him and Elijah Wood both were like, and after this, we're just going to do weird shit for the most part. Like we're just going to do weird stuff from now on. Hang out with Cronenberg and. Yeah. And any other weird director that Elijah Wood works with, he's like, I don't know. I'll just do whatever. Maniac remake, sign me up.
Yeah. By the way, though, that Toxic Avenger remake looks great. Have you seen the trailer? The one with Dinklage? Yeah, I think
I'm glad they're releasing it. They were going to not release that.
I know,
it was like
I know.
Kind of in not development hell, but like for some reason it was finished and nobody wanted to touch it. And I was like, how bad is that movie? But it sounds like it was perfectly fine and they just didn't have a distribution plan for it.
Yeah.
And probably out by the time this episode drops. Everyone's seen that movie, but hope everyone. It's good.
You know, but and we get this great little moment, right? Again, a little character moments we get. Strider takes him and like we reveal like, you know, he's not bad. You know, he's like basically like, I know what's up, and like you should be more careful. And the hobbits, you know, busting in, you know, just like fists, basically being like, we'll fight this guy because we care so much about this person, you know. And we get the rope-a-dope with the Nazgul and the. You know,
man, when they're stabbing down that's a great horror moment too.
And the music, I like the quiet, you know, yeah. You get that great shot too. It's just a little moment, but like, you know, they knock over the wall, basically. They kill the guy guarding the wall. And then I love when they're running in the bar and like you see the barman behind the bar, like looking terrified. You just see like their swords like moving past. Great shot.
Well, even the moment with the gate when they crash through it, like that's a cartoon. That's some Roadrunner shit right there. But like the way it's done here, it is terrifying. Like we sort of feel that bone crunching, like what that's supposed to be. And it's otherwise so silly and out of context. You know, it's like, oh, they just knocked down the door and crushed the guy. But like in the moment, because we kind of feel the rain and the muck and the lightning and everything, it's like, it's that sort of iconic gothic sort of mythical horror stuff that he's doing. Yeah,
absolutely. And what I love too about this next little section, kind of when they're getting right before they get to the you know, the watchtower where Frodo gets stabbed.
What a great set that is.
We get Weathertop is what it's called. We get journeying time, right? And we get this idea that like this is not an easy journey, right? Get them kind of going through that like the swamp bog where they're getting bit by all like the midges or whatever, you know, and like, but we get two great little character moments, one of which I believe is in the theatrical and the other one it definitely is not, which is we get the hobbits talking about all the meals, right? We've had one, yes, but what about second breakfast?
Second breakfast, sure.
You know?
You can't leave that out. You can't cut that from your movie.
11Ds, afternoon tea, you know, whatever. And then we get that moment, which I think is so beautiful and so wonderful. And it's like, I understand why you cut out of a theatrical version, but You get the Aragorn singing while they're sleeping. And it's like songs and stuff are so important to the Tolkien stuff. It's such a key aspect of that, of his sort of like, I'm creating like a mythology for England sort of thing where it's like these songs that were passed down. Like it's the only way the information was passed down. And like he's singing the songs in such a sad way, you know? And it's like, it just so captures what those stories are really about in so many ways. It's just so great that it's in this. You know, I remember seeing this extended edition for the first time and being like, oh my God, like they put like, you know, this scene is so good and it's always been stuck. It always stuck to my head, you know, like that.
And I don't remember that not being there the first time I saw this movie.
No,
it feels important.
It's
vital.
Very important. You know, we get
that's really the first, and it's only in this version as you're saying, but that's when we get a sense of the Aragorn Arwen stuff.
Yes, that's the first little seed of it. Yes,
really important, and is you know kind of even in this movie plays out in some pretty interesting ways.
I mean, one of the biggest things he puts back into these extended editions is there's a bunch of song stuff he puts back in. Like that scene in the bar in the Shire where Merry and Pippin are singing, they're doing like that dance on the table or whatever before, you know, Frodo goes and Gandalf comes back. Like that scene is not in the, you know, that portion of the scene is not in the original, is not in the theatrical version of the movie either. You know, but this importance of like songs and stuff, the culture is a very big part, you know, of these stories. You know, we check a little back in with Gandalf here. We get to see more of that orc makeup, you know, and this idea how he's working with Sauron, you know, but we only kind of stop by there quickly. And then we're at the, you know,
Yep. This camera movement, I know we've already talked about, we have so much other stuff to talk about, but like this literal descent into hell, right? From the top of the tower, the sky, down into this like pit of evil, you know, that is like, you can see like around corners. It's not like it doesn't go straight down. There's like all these little tributaries of it, right? And then we get the close-ups of them like forging the weapons and all these things. And it's like, it really sets you up to like fear these things, you know, like when they talk about like all this looming evil in this movie, like we've seen enough of it to know that like it's not just, you know, because so much of this, as we've said, is about legend and mythology and going out in the world and encountering these things. Well, we've gotten just enough glimpses of them, and it's shot in such a way that like, you know, we do feel that when they start chasing after it, and it's not long after this, when they become kind of the focus of the story, it's like, yeah, we should be afraid of them, right? Like this is an insurmountable thing. Like they feel no pain. They want nothing but then to kill.
Yeah. And this is when the Uruk-hai is like born out of the freaking pit thing and he breaks the orc's neck.
Gross. I mean, again, this is a PG-13 movie. This is like some body horror, you know, almost a little Cronenbergian. And like it's like emerging out of the muck, like it is primordial and gruesome, and that's what this needs to be, right? Like I think one of the problems with fantasy, like Dragonheart you mentioned before, right, is everything feels very kind of, you know, they feel like toys. Everything feels like a you know, like a comic booky, I guess. Like it doesn't feel it feels like it so often feels like we took these things and placed them here and then turned the cameras on, right? Not that these things were here and we brought the cameras in. You know what I mean? Right. Like seeing this thing burst out of the muck is like a very sort of, you know, it's visceral and it's gruesome and it makes it feel that much more real.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it gives you this clear line, right, between what the good guys do and how they operate and how the bad guys operate as well. Just in a very primal, you know, like dark versus light sort of, you know, from the beginning of time storytelling aspect as well. You know, it gives you both those things.
What's great about the orcs also is that they are just human enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they are they're scary because they look a little bit like us. You know, it looks
and they
like
talk. They talk too.
They talk.
Yeah.
They have this kind of corpse-like appearance, but they're also jacked. And like something about the design really works, I think, as well, where they're not just like lizard men fantasy creatures, but like, you know, they do, you know, what's the story? They were elves that were corrupted or something. And elves look very much like humans and they look like that, right? Like they're just human enough where you can kind of get a sense of why they're scary. Although I also love the cave troll, which we haven't gotten to yet, which is much more of a fantasy creature. But great design as well.
Absolutely. We get the Weathertop scene, which we talked about, which is, again, every scene, all these scenes are great. You know, seeing to see the wraiths, like,
I feel
in their
that
real
stab
form.
wound more than I've ever felt. It's like, you know, that and the shower scene in Psycho are the movie stabbings that are hardest to watch, I think, because you just feel that thing go in.
Yeah. Also, very important scene because it shows you, like, these, like, 9, like, immortal power beings, Aragorn can beat them. You know, like, you get that sense too, which is like, okay, you're starting to get like the power level sense as well, right? Like, Aragorn is like
beautifully choreographed swordplay here too, where he's working his way up the staircase. I mean, we've seen so many things like that, like movies, you know, from back in the day, right? Like Daring Do and swordplay and you know, Errol Flynn and all that stuff. But like, it's just done so well here. Like everything, the choreography of it, the way the swords look, the sort of weight that everything has, like it just hits so much harder in this movie.
Yeah. And you get a little, you know, and he's good about doing his little moments too, like that moment where, like, you know, you see Aragorn sort of realize that the last one is behind him, and he throws the torch like into his head, you know, and he runs off. You know, we get Arwen next, right? We get our first kind of look, really up close look at the elves. We get that little scene earlier where you see the elves passing on the road, which also isn't in the theatrical version either.
Yeah, I knew that was an
addition, which is a beautiful little moment, you know, where you get a little more of the Sam, like, his like kind of like weird obsession with the elves. Like he has like you know, it's kind of like a kid childhood, like the elves, you know, but Arwen showing up and, you know, this kind of way they sort of like, you know, make her look more ethereal. They'll do this across the board with the elves a lot of the time.
That's a lovely thing too. It's another thing that's kind of in the background of all these movies. This idea of the elves, they're like ascending to like and I haven't read the book, so I'm just kind of basing this just on what I've seen in the movies, but like they are leaving the world, right?
Yes.
They're ascending to heaven or something like that.
Yeah, basically that's what they're doing,
whatever the equivalent of that is. And just the thought that like these magical beings are not going to be around anymore and they're going to just leave what's there. And it's kind of mentioned, and it's not even really in the theatrical version. Like this aspect, they, you know, it's brought up, we sort of get that sense, but just that's like a really big idea philosophically.
Huge
and
big idea. Yeah, absolutely.
That is just kind of there. And it's another thing that you have to kind of add into all the other stuff that's going on here. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. This idea that like this,
like it really feels kind of biblical.
Yeah, this race has kind of protected the world for millennia, right, is done. Like they're just done. Like they're leaving. Their power is waning. Like they don't have a vested interest anymore in this. So like it really falls to these people who are going to be left to take care of it. Like it's not, you can't just look to these immortal, all powerful beings anymore to save you, right? Is a lot of what that message is, right? I think this chase scene is great. And I don't think it's just one of these things where it's like, these are just people in costumes riding real horses, riding through a beautiful landscape with some insane camera work. That's the other thing too. The camera work is insane. Like through these trees, through these clearings, you know, following horses, all of this stuff is like just crazy filmmaking stuff, you know, that can easily be taken for granted because the movies are 25 years old. And it's just like, this is the way the movie looks, but like this is a lot. Like you don't have to shoot this scene like this, you know, like that's the thing too. This is there are several times in the like behind the scenes documentaries where some of the cast people be like, you know, we thought Peter was crazy. Like we're like, there's no way you can do this. You know, you can't do that shot where Gandalf is riding up to, you know, Isengard for the first time down that path and the camera's over the top and you see the tower come into view, right, while he's riding. It's a real guy riding a horse and you're marrying this real path to this miniature. Like it doesn't work like that. You can't do that, you know? And
what
they did
cool
it.
Shot. We skipped right over that one.
Yeah, well, we could spend
I know.
We could spend 25 hours talking about this movie for sure.
Well, it's stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
All these things that we've seen in so many movies and we've seen so many times, like riding horses, right? It's another sort of iconic movie thing. Like the Hollywood, you know, made thousands of Westerns back in the day. And like, But in this movie, we kind of feel like we're seeing it for the first time. Where we can like feel the wind in our hair when it's someone riding a horse, when it's someone pulling out a sword. Like all these things are like, they're so ingrained in our like collective cinematic consciousness, but like they feel so new here. And like it feels like every time he does it, that's almost intentional, right? Like this is not movies you've seen before. This is a whole world unto itself, and it's going to feel like the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
And I think that's what hurts the second two movies in the trilogy is that we're seeing it for the second and third time.
Yeah. I mean, there are still things, we'll get to those movies when we talk about them, right? But there are still things in those movies which had never been done before that are just like, what?
Yeah, he's still got tricks up his sleeve.
Yeah, for sure. The fact that he's holding back, like, in this next movie, there's going to be a fully CG character that has like an emotional arc is, insane. But we get to Rivendell and like, again, so good about, and again, it's built into the story, but so good about like, okay, let's take a breath. Like you're in a safe place for a little while, right? The stakes are still very high and we get the real sort of like, this thing can't stay here. It's gotta go. It's gotta go farther.
Another thing, oh man, the way he shoots these fantasy locations, right? Like we get the establishing shots, but in those establishing shots, there's always a person, right?
Yeah.
It's not just, it's not, the scale is impressive, right? But we've seen miniatures in movies before. And a lot of times, particularly with older movies, matte paintings or now with CGI, we don't see like the human characters. Like, I think it's this scene here where we go into Rivendell the first time and there's like a staircase and we see a character like way in the background just kind of ascending this staircase as we're entering, with the characters in the foreground. And we get a sense that like these places are inhabited. There's a great moment later where before they go into Moria, there's this like giant aqueduct thing and there's like water spilling down off of it, Like movies have made stuff like that before that looks really good, but this makes it feel like very alive, very tangible, inhabited. And he's very careful to do that with every one of these locations.
Yeah. And that Rivendell too, there's that big wide one where you actually see the whole like sort of like valley or whatever they're in, like in place, and there's like a path on the right side of the screen and there's like a person walking down that path, you know?
That's what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, like you always get kind of the scale and like they're not important characters. They're going off somewhere else. Like this is a living world in some way. It's like in a very good open world video game, you have that, right? Like when your character's not doing stuff, you feel like everything's still happening around them. This movie is very careful to do that every time we go to one of these places.
Yes. Like you said, people live here, right? People live here. Let's think like, you'll see like, let's even like say like the 1978 Superman, right? Where you see Krypton. You're like, nobody lives here. It's just rocks. It's just columns of rocks. Like
it's
who
a
lives
design
here?
element.
Yeah, it's a design element. It's a cool design element. Don't get me wrong, but like
it looks great, but it's not anything. I feel that way about like the Star Wars movie. Like the prequels tried so hard to do that by just throwing a lot of CGI at the screen. And when he went back and redid the original trilogy and put in like background action that was just CGI'd in, kind of copied and pasted on, it never feels the way this does because, this is designed from the ground up to feel like a living place.
Absolutely. And I think, Hugo Weaving shows up for the second time here. Right? He's in that opening scene, but we get him again. And again, another important bit of casting, right? Because he has a hard edge to him. So it lets you know that these elves are not like ethereal, like, we're all just kind and like calm beings who love you, right? Like this is like a person who doesn't really suffer fools. Like he doesn't like, and he's
he's a badass.
He's a badass, right? And, also important, like these aren't like, we aren't like little elves with little ears who like are little guys who do like, are like cute, this is like a badass warrior dude who like has a lot of power and a lot of gravitas, right? Rivendell, again, another great music track like that, like ethereal, beautiful music is there.
The lighting with all the elf stuff, right? And later on, the Galadriel stuff.
Yeah, and Lothlorien, it's really turned up, but
Like, sure. But we see it a little bit here as well. Like, it's Cate Blanchett, whatever. She's a very attractive human being, but like, she really does look like a mythical creature in these movies. And it's not because we're just kind of throwing a bunch of accoutrements on her special effects wise. It's just the way it's lit, the kind of gauziness of the focus. It's brilliant. The way all this stuff kind of, its form follows function all the way through.
And we are now, I think, like an hour and 15 minutes into the movie. And we are finally going to meet the rest of our cast, right? The rest of our cast is going to show up now. So we have this big Council of Elrond scene. You know, we get Bo Ramirez. We talked about Sean Bean earlier. We've got Orlando Bloom showing as Legolas, John Rhys Davies as Gimli, right? They're all showing up here. And, you know, this scene, obviously legendary scene at this point, fantastic scene. We get everybody's point of view, right? Everybody, we learn about their characters. We learn about the sort of friction between everybody and in whatever points they may have. You know, the Legolas and Gimli stuff also obviously played like a little bit for laughs at this point, just to, you know, give you a little bit of a breather. Right.
But this does feel like a political, like a war room scene in, you know, like in Darkest Hour or something like that, right? Like these very serious characters discussing very serious matters.
Yeah. And bringing up things that, you know, you as the audience are probably asking yourself, right? Which is like, if this ring is so powerful, why don't we use it against the bad guy? Like, why wouldn't you do that? You know,
the opposing perspectives make sense. It's not just
exactly.
These are not just movie characters who are there just in opposition, but like they have kind of a point.
Yeah, absolutely. And Boromir is like, you know, we're the ones who are on the front lines every single day. Like, you guys don't even know. Like, our people are dying all of the time just to make sure that you can have a normal life, you know, or whatever. So it's like, you know, why shouldn't we have it so we can use it against him, you know? And they really lay it out here, right? What has to happen, right? Elrond lays it out. It has to be taken into Mount Doom. It has to be destroyed, right? And
well, Gimli, another great moment here where he just tried to smash it with his axe. Can't do that.
Yeah. You know, and Gandalf speaking the black speech, you know, and then it's also, it's a very political feeling, right? Where he's like, we don't use that language here. And he's like, dude, it's going to be everywhere. Okay, we don't do something about this. You know, I like that moment. And then, like, you know, it all builds. And the moment where Frodo says, I will take it, right? And, you know, Gandalf has that face. I do get really emotional. I get like teared up when it happens.
Yeah.
Because it's like that moment. It's just that thing where it's like this person who shouldn't have to do this is stepping up to do it when all these super powerful people are just like fighting over BS, you know, basically, you know, fighting over egos. And again, it's in the book, but but I do not know the way. It's such like a, you know, it's like, I will do this, but I don't really know what to do, guys. Like, I'm not like a badass. Like, I don't know what to do. And then I'm all giving their, like, you know, their sword, their axe, whatever.
You have my sword, you have my axe. We did not talk about you do not simply walk into.
Oh yeah, we do not. So breaking down, and Bean is so good. You know, you believe it. You know, you believe everything he's saying. You know.
Yeah, and it's too bad. Like, this movie has been memed to death. You were talking about that a little bit earlier. How we've all seen this so many. I mean, it's become beloved, you know, for good reason. But like, you forget how powerful this stuff actually is. You know, just sort of in context, because we've seen it so long. You know, every political election, there's a Boromir meme. You know, you do not simply whatever.
Yeah.
But like, in the movie, it's so powerful. The scene is so good. The introduction to these characters is so good. And like, you know, as you said, we're so far into the movie at this point, right? Like, there are movies that have done their entire story and they're about to wrap up at this point. Yeah. And we're just getting started. And literally, we are just getting started. Like, there's a whole movie and a half to go, even in just this first part of the trilogy. It's incredible. Yeah.
And we get all the hobbits coming as well. You know, again, little emotional moments, but tinged with humor. You know, we get the great, like, you know, Pippin, you need people of intelligence on this vision quest thing or whatever, you know? So like all that stuff.
And this is the start of a thing that we don't see too much of in this trilogy, but it's the fellowship all together.
All
as
standing
I was saying
together.
before.
Yeah.
Just that shot of all of them like that.
Yeah.
You kind of like internalize that for the rest of the trilogy.
And we get the title of the movie. Hugo Weaving gets to deliver the title of the movie. You know, he gets to say the Fellowship of the Ring. And then we get this great scene with Bilbo and Frodo where Bilbo's kind of giving him his mithril shirt, his sword.
Sting.
And then this, you know, the scene where he sees the ring and he has that moment where his face gets all weird or whatever, which is in the book, which was one of those moments when I'm watching the movie, I'm like, how are they going to do this? You know, like it happens, you know, but it's after that, right? It's that, like, when he's crying and he's like, I'm so sorry, my dear boy. It's like, it's so affecting. And it's like, this is just what good acting does. You know what I mean? Like, Home is so good in that scene and you buy it so much as this old man who's just like regrets so many things and he just can't do anything about it anymore. You know, he's too old to do anything about it. Just really great.
One of the greatest genre film actors of all time. Like, even just this and Alien, like, done. Yeah,
absolutely. 100%. Yeah. And then we get, you know, the first time we hear the Fellowship theme, right? The dun, 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 dun. I think one of the most iconic themes in movie history at this point, right?
Is it? I mean, I guess it is. I feel like it should be even more than that.
If you do that,
like,
people know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, and I think that's the mark for me. And again, we get more journeying, right? We get more of them walking places, doing things.
Shots, yes.
Just them walking like helicopter
walking on
shots.
A mountain. Yep. Yeah. We're just these sweeping vistas. And again, it's all real. It's just New Zealand just kind of looks like that.
Yep. And they're just walking on these, like, it's like 4 different shots of them in totally different like biomes every single time.
Yeah. It looks like it's 4 different seasons. Like, it's amazing.
It is amazing. We get that really cute scene, like I said, about them fighting with the hobbits, Boromir fighting with the hobbits and their cute little moments and them tackling him and then tackling Aragorn, and you get like this, like, these people like each other. They have affection for each other, right? And Boromir was a little hesitant to go on the journey, but he's not like, I don't want to be here. Like, yeah. I think you're wrong. I think you're out every moment. You know what I mean? And I like that a lot.
Like the sense of like goodness and duty in this movie is so strong. Like, they do. Like, we are in this together. The camaraderie, the fellowship again.
Yeah.
It's all, even here, even when they're just getting started, we get a real sense of that. Yeah. And then we also, the birds, whatever.
The birds, Crab-Eye from Dunlin.
Yeah, that bit, where we get the sense that they're always being watched. There's always something kind of right on their heels. And there's the all-seeing eye is always there.
Yeah.
So
this idea that they have to be stealthy. I like the idea that, like, they can't, it's really important that the enemy doesn't know
and there's
what they're doing.
Multiple ways that they can go, but like every one of them is fraught with like all of this, potential peril.
Yeah.
Like, there's no easy way to do this, and we get a very good. Obviously, it's a movie. There'd be no movie if they could just walk to Mount Doom.
Yeah.
Which they do. It just takes a really long time.
It takes a really long time.
But like we get a real sense of how everything's sort of weighted against them. It feels impossible as it should.
And again, setting up seeming like, Gimli being like, we're taking the long way around here. Like, why don't we just go through one of my bros' place, And Gandalf saying, Gimli, I would not go there unless I had literally had no other choice. Is like, when you hear Gandalf say something like that, you're like, okay, there's something bad. Yeah. Like, we shouldn't go there. We should not go to Moria, guys. The first time I saw
this, it's my favorite sequence in the movie because I think, as you said, it's one of the greatest action sequences of all time.
Yeah.
But just the, the dwarves dug too deeply and found something in the shadows. I was like, I can't wait to see that thing. And like seeing it now as a much older person, having seen it so many times where I know exactly what they're going to find, was like, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. But like you said, from the moment they decide to go, then when they get in, first of all, I love that Gandalf doesn't know how to get in. And he's just fucking riffing. He's just like, he's saying stuff, and then he tries to push the door, and he like hits the door. I love that. And I love that they keep like the dotty old man aspect of him in the because the character that exists in the book, obviously, in the movie. They could have easily made him like, I'm the all-wise wizard who knows everything you're supposed to do at all times.
Or they could have made him goofy.
Yeah, or goofy. But there's this like great mix of like, like he knows what he's doing, but like just like every person who's been alive for a long time, they forget shit sometimes. Like Gandalf's done a lot of stuff, he doesn't know how to do it.
We get an incredible, like one of the least important scenes in the movie, but I absolutely love it. This creature that comes out of the pond there. It's amazing. Yeah. It's like as good as anything in any sort of creature feature.
Exactly. And I just love
They're
that,
like hacking its limbs off. I mean, it's amazing. It's like a Jurassic Park scene. That's has very little bearing on anything else. It's like, this is just the thing that's outside the door, and all they have to do is go in, basically.
Yeah. But I love it because it's like, well, it means they can't get out, right? And I like that. I love a scene where like the heroes are forced to do something like that. Like they choose to not to stay in there because they know it's the wrong thing to do. Like they know as soon as they see those bodies, we shouldn't be in here. Like they're making the right decision, right, to leave, and then they're forced to go down this road. But I love that Frodo figures out the riddle. He figures out the answer, and the way Gandalf, he says "melon" or whatever, and the door opens. My best friend and I say that to this day all of the time. Like it's just one of those things, like it's like stuck in your head that we just say all the time. Nerd. Yeah, it's a big nerd thing.
So speak friend, and he just has to say it in the Elvish tongue.
He say it in Elvish, yeah.
How does he not figure that out, Gandalf?
I don't know. It's the thing. It's one of those things. I just like that. I like that he's like, I don't know. He's overthinking it. He's overthink how to get into it.
Like I thought I missed something. It's like I know I've seen this before, but is that it?
No, that's it. And I love like, again, these little quotes that in the way it's more that it's not even the words, it's more the way the actors deliver them. But when John Rhys Davies says, and they call it a mine, mine or whatever, love that line. But then we get Sean Bean's line, which is so good, where he's like, "This is no mine, it's a tomb," or whatever, and you're like, "Oh shit!" Like something, all these dead bodies, it's like, and it's like harrowing, like just like piles of bodies, like not even like a couple of bodies here and there, right? And they're forced to go in.
This is literally, I mean, it's so directly inspired, I think, by the Indiana Jones franchise. And like, I think it does that thing that we see, in the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
So much better than that.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And not that those movies are great. They're some of my favorite movies of all time, like this one is. But like, just the idea of going underground into this perilous, booby-trapped sort of place where there's something waiting for you there down in the shadows and everything. And, the desiccated corpses and the spider webs and the stone, kind of this jagged stone everywhere. You've never really seen that realized to the extent that it feels like The Descent for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the Gandalf. I just love the filming is like Gandalf having that, and he puts like that stone in his staff and he like lights it up. It's just, and giving that little bit of light is just like a great visual, motif to be going through.
And what's brilliant about the scene too is we get a little bit of them just kind of going into this location. Like they don't get attacked right away.
Yeah, no.
We do
Not
have
for a very long time.
Clear sense that they're about to. Yeah. But like, they're advancing the story. There's like some back and forth dialogue about what happened there and, kind of where they're going and all that stuff. And, it's just building dread. It's building anticipation. What is down in the shadows? And we always have a sense of that. But also, they are progressing forward on this sort of linear quest that I love stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like, but they still, and what I love about this, again, we talked about it earlier, about the moments, we still get time for two things. There's still, even all this darkness, there's still time for wonder, right? Like the mithril they see down that cavern when they get to like the dwarf city, right? And all those giant columns and
the hall, what a great visual, what a great set that is.
And like Sam says like, and that's painting. An eye opener, that's a real eye opener. It's just like these, time for these people, like they're going through all this stuff and they've seen a lot of stuff already and it's still like, whoa, like this world is impressive, and like they're impressed by it, and like it cuts through the dread that they have, this like wonder of what has been created and what's going on,
Well, just the very slapsticky scene where they're in the room with the well, right? And
yeah.
Is it Merry or Pippin?
It's Pippin.
Pippin like bumps into the corpse and like falls, and then the rest of it falls down.
Yeah.
And it's like, how silly. What a, this dumb Three Stooges character.
Yeah.
But then you see it go down. It descends into the pit, and it's like, oh, this kind of looks like the thing we saw before with the orcs, but scarier.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, just kind of clatters around down there, and everyone, the look that Gandalf gives him in that moment, like, he's going to get rebuked for it, but also Gandalf is scared shitless at this moment too.
Yeah.
Just another sort of great moment of anticipation. Then you get like the most amazing fight sequence.
Yeah. But I will say, I know we're spending a lot of time on it, but I got to talk about a couple of things that happened before that because they're very important.
The sequence is great.
Before that, we do get the scene where Gandalf doesn't know which way to go. Again, another moment where he's like, I don't remember this at all. And they're sitting there for a while. And this is when we get the Gollum. He says like, Gollum's been following us for 3 days. And we get what is probably, I think, kind of like the skeleton key to the whole trilogy, right? Which is this conversation between Gandalf and Frodo, where, Frodo says, basically Bilbo should have killed him, basically. And,
taken pity on him.
He said, it's a pity Bilbo didn't kill him.
It's a pity he didn't kill him. He didn't kill him out of pity.
Yeah. And he, and he says like, many who die deserve life and many who live deserve death. Who are you going to give it to them, Frodo? Like, don't be so quick to deal out death and judgment. Gollum has some part to play. I just, for good or ill, I don't know yet. And then we get the other thing that Frodo says, which is like, I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had ever happened. And he says, so do all who live to see such times.
Right.
But all we have to decide is what we do with the time that's given to us. That's like fucking deep shit, man. Like, it's like,
yeah.
And like, I think like the thing they say about Tolkien, right, is like, he's not allegorical. He very much Tolkien was like, you cannot one-to-one my books. You cannot say like, Sauron is Hitler. Like, you cannot do that. Like, that's not
it's not C.S. Lewis. This lion is Jesus.
Yeah, no, but it is, he said, I want it to be applicable, which is that whenever you read this, whether it's now or 100 years from now, you can relate it to something going on in your life. And I think
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Right now,
hearing that line in 2025, with a young child and, seeing the world playing out the way it is right now, it's like, I wish I had lived in a different time. I wish she had lived in a different time, but what can you do about it?
You can't do anything about it.
You step up and you become part of the fellowship and you get that ring to Mount Doom, damn it.
And it's just like, it's such a beautiful scene. McKellen plays it amazingly, right? It's just like, it'll be called back and brought back a couple of times, but it's like that is a linchpin scene to me.
Yeah, almost 100%. Unnecessarily, because I think it sticks with you enough where they don't necessarily need to.
But when they bring it back at the end, it gets me, man.
It is. It's a perfect point.
Because it's at the end, when you bring it back in, we'll talk about it now, because, whatever, it doesn't matter. But the reason I think I bring it back now is because you really are truly meant to be in Frodo's head at that moment, right? Where he's basically saying, like, I don't want any of this again. Like, it's fresh. Like, it's like, he's not at that point thinking back to that conversation. He's just thinking it again. Like, all of this, I don't want this, right?
Yeah,
and
then Gandalf is gone to him.
Gandalf is gone, but then hearing that voice in his head is like...
the one person that could have maybe helped him, like, for real, like his super powerful, like, benefactor is gone.
Yeah, but then hearing that voice in his head, it's like, for him, it's like, remembering, right, that like this is still true no matter what, like even more true now.
I also like, and I remember even the first time I saw this, just the idea of what the ring does to you, right? Like it makes you live. It's like vampirism, right? It corrupts you physically, mentally. It is this thing that, the Gollum, the explanation of Gollum. He used to be a man. His name was Smeagol. And like that whole thing is really powerful too. And I forgot how little we see of him in this movie.
Yeah, not only his eyes and his hands, basically
haunting the corner of the frame to some extent. Like, we see him in the river later on, and he's there. He's too afraid to get close to them, but he's been following us the whole time. And Gandalf just kind of says it like that's not that big of a deal. Like, he's been following us for 3 weeks or whatever. Like, holy shit, that creepy ass thing has been following you for 3 weeks and nobody's doing anything about it. But, he's this man who has been, he's lived far too long for a person who has lived, and his mind has been destroyed. And he's just this shriveled, sad, pitiable thing that's also kind of scary.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so that scene is so important. And then right before, I think great little horror thing, right, is when Gandalf's reading the book, right? Because it really sets the dread line for you, where it's like, and then where he's like, the drums in the deep, right? They are coming.
I always love stuff like that in like Resident Evil, like, survival horror video games. You find the diary and it's like, we did this experiment and, stuff like it. It's exactly that scene. I do love the bit he picks up the book and like a bunch of the pages fall out and he just kind of turns to the end and we just...
And the book is like obviously like a sword hit it or an axe hit it or something.
Yes, there's a big slash right through it.
It's so thick though that it couldn't be broken like that. And much like a Resident Evil thing, the last like word is like scrawled like they died as they wrote it. You know what I mean? Love that. And then the scene where the thing falls in and we get the fool of a took. What do you I would not want Ian McKellen to yell at me like that. It was it's very scary. But then the fight scene, like you said, is unbelievable.
Just when they're firing arrows through the crack in the door. I mean, this goes on for about 15 minutes and they're just fighting in this enclosed
little
space.
room. Yeah. I love that.
And just like they're pouring in the orcs and they're just like shooting arrows at them. We get more sword play. We see the hobbits kind of finally doing some action hero stuff here.
Sam, I'm getting the hang of this. Sort of hitting them with the pan in the head.
He's hitting them with a frying pan.
But that really... But the thing, you talk about the fight choreography earlier with Aragorn fighting the ring wraiths, but like such an important thing about this whole series, and it's said here, is everybody fights differently. Everyone has their own style.
Yes.
Everyone has their own way of doing it, and that's so important because it gives character, right? So you need to, even in an action scene, he's communicating character, right? Legolas is basically immutable. Like he's smooth and silky, and no matter where he's fighting, what he's doing, it's like he's dancing, right? Gimli is just like
He's brute force.
Pure brute force.
He's got the short guy Napoleon complex.
Yeah. I
have it too. Yeah, I sympathize a lot with Gimli. I think I don't know if he's my favorite character, but he's the one that's most like me in some
But he stands on top of that tomb and he's like, there's one dwarf in Moria who still draws blood. He's like, wants them to come in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love
that bit. He's
and
so
like
good.
even Boromir and Aragorn fight differently, even though they're both men, and I think that's like so important.
They kind of look similar, but they have, they are doing different things in this. Like everyone has a role. That's the fellowship, right? Everyone has a role to play. Everyone is there for a reason. And these scenes really sort of bring that out. And then we get the cave troll, which is just like, again, this amazing, it's every creature feature you've ever wanted. It's every big bad thing you've ever seen in a movie kind of wrapped into one. The stuff with the chains where they're like yanking on the chain, pulling its head back. And then I think it's Legolas like runs up the chain at one point, jumps on its back. I mean, it's all like such, it's like silent comedy stuff. Yeah. But also, those movies are action movies. Buster Keaton and all those things. Yeah. They were the first like action filmmakers, and this is kind of paying homage to that, but also it is kind of a modern, badass, like gritty action scene. It's, like Peter
and
Jackson
the cave troll also, like as an effect, like obviously it looks older, right? It's not as detailed, doesn't have the things that I think really good CG nowadays could really make a character like that really look like it is just like part of that scene, right? But even so, for 25 years ago, it looks better than you would ever expect it to look and does its job, right? In all ways. But again, the way so he's so smart about the way he choreographs battle scenes and fight scenes, because that scene starts right where they hear the drums, right? You see like just the light coming up underneath, and you hear the drums, and you know what's coming because of that book. And then Boromir goes to look out the door, and you just get the arrow that hits like right by his head, right? And as he's shutting the door, probably like 5 minutes before it comes in, he just says, "They have a cave troll," And again, it's one of these things that just like, whatever it is, it's many times I've watched it, it's whatever. That line reading is like one of my favorite line readings in the world. I don't know what it is about it, but the way he says it, it's just like, because he's not like panicked. He's not like, oh, can you even believe it? He's just kind of like, this is annoying.
It's like, oh, fuck. Yep.
Oh, fuck. Like, we got to deal with this shit now. I love that about it. Love it, love it, love it. But yeah, and then the hero, so you're waiting for this thing to come in the whole time when they're fighting the orcs. And when it finally comes in, you're like, whoa, shit.
Yeah, it's still a big moment, right? The way it just sort of crashes there. Like, Peter Jackson's done action before. We've talked about Dead Alive, right? Like that scene where they're swinging from the ceiling and all that stuff, and there's zombies everywhere. Yeah. So like, we know he's capable of this stuff, but he's never sustained it like this, right? Like it's over the course of however many minutes the scene goes on, and I think it's a lot more precise here than it is in Dead Alive. I mean, it's, where everyone is. Like, I grew up on action movies. I love action movies. Yeah, me too. I feel like most action movies made in the past 25 years or so, they've really lost the sense of how to just choreograph. And I'm not dumping on everything, John Wick and all that
but yes,
stuff.
It has become a problem that, like, I think choreographing action scenes has become less of a focus.
Like establishing the space. It's not just, seeing a character doing cool moves, whatever.
Exactly.
But like, you also have to see what the set looks like and where everyone is. And, like the thing that bothers me is like when people are having a shootout or something, it's hard to tell who's shooting at who and where they're standing and where they're hiding. And here it's like, you're in it, right? Like you, at every moment of the scene, where each of these characters is, what they're doing in the battle. Like, it's edited beautifully. Yeah. We're not cutting away just to cut away. We're not cutting away, to obscure the violence or anything like that. I mean, it's not graphic, but it's pretty hard hitting. It's kind of bone crunching fisticuffs, right?
And a great mix of that, like sort of like really up close, like you're in the chaos, and also let's pull back and show what's happening. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. 100%. I think you're absolutely right. I think, we'll get to see, obviously the scenes will get bigger and bigger, and we're going to talk about Helm's Deep in the next episode, but like, you're absolutely right.
If this was as big as this ever got, right? Like, if this was the biggest action scene in the entire trilogy, you'd be like, that's one of the greatest things I've ever seen. Yeah. You wouldn't be disappointed. No, but he does. You're right. He keeps upping the stakes and upping the stakes and upping.
But it's one of those things that I think people don't realize sometimes is why they like certain action scenes more than other action scenes, is exactly what you're talking about. It's like, I always bring up the bridge scene in Mission Impossible 3, which I think is a slept on action scene, which is, I think, one of the best spatially organized action scenes ever. And it's also the reason why the New York battle scene in the first Avengers is as good as anything they ever did, no matter how big they got later, because it's got so much spatial recognition about what you're doing, and you're learning characters are here and they're here and they're here and they're here, and this is where everything is interacting and happening.
As opposed to the very similar scenes in the Transformers franchise, where it's
right,
just
where you're like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, that building just fell over. Whatever.
Yeah, I guess, like, whatever, you know. So that's great. This scene is amazing.
And then the run out of God, when they go back into the hall, and like everything just starts pouring out of everywhere and chasing them, and
them skittering like bugs down the thing is so good. It's such a good imagery.
Then we get the shots from the side where they're coming in from the sides and all that, and like still this thing has such a long way to go. I love, you know, when the Balrog, when they, you know. They get cornered, and that's a great sort of, you know, cliffhanger sort of moment. This is all, you know, silent movie serial stuff, right? Yeah.
And we get one of my favorite orcs in the whole trilogy, by the way, when they're getting surrounded, which is like that bug-eyed one, like that looks like these big, like yellow bugged eyes. They get surrounded, and then we get like, you know, the like
that
thing.
Horror moment. Yeah, like what's the thing that all of them are scared of? But then there's still a couple of them that are just like hanging out like up from some like safe position up high, like these sniper positions, shooting arrows down at them. It's so good.
And again, another great bean delivery where he, you know, that what new devilry is this, you know, sort of line. And this seeing how scared Gandalf is, right? And how scared he is of what's going on and what's coming. Like, and the fact that he's like, just get out of here. Like, there's literally nothing you can do. There is nothing you can do. Like, I know you're the strongest human in the world, like to Aragorn, basically.
There's a line, something like that, right? Like, this thing is
beyond, this foe's beyond any of
you. Beyond any of you. That's what he says. Yeah.
It just has them run, right? And we get great adventure, you know, the Brit, like on the steps scene, you know, where we've got, you know,
the teetering, the rock staircase is falling down and it tips forward at just the right moment, and they have to jump off.
And we get the Fellowship theme come back in for a little bit. We get a little bit of when that happens, we get a little bit of like, oh, this is okay, we're okay thing. And then when they get halfway across that bridge and Gandalf turns around, like this, I think, again, the scene is one of my favorite action scene probably in all of movies, and this moment is like my favorite. Like, this is like McKellen, just like, it's like him being like, you guys I'm better than all of you. Like, as an actor, you know, it's like that moment, like when he the way he says like the same thing 3 times, and every time he says it, it like feels different, you know? And when we actually see the Balrog come out, it's like, and that still looks great because it's very impressionistic. It's very like, you know, what am I exactly looking at? Like, you know, type of thing.
Oh yeah, it's like something out of a Goya painting. Yeah. And it's dark enough and it's surrounded by shadows enough that, like, you know, you're not seeing kind of the trickery of it.
Yeah. And like and again, I'll say this again, just a modern filmmaking bugaboo. The blacks in this movie it's black. Like, like the darks are dark. It's not some weird faded gray. It's like, it's dark, you know? But I mean, obviously it's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's been seen a million times, it's been clipped a million times, it's been memed a million times, but the "you shall not pass," that last time he does it when he brings the staff down is like, it's just like I get chills throughout my entire body when he does it.
It's a moment of badassery, and this is like a skinny old white man, you know. This is not like you know, Ian McKellen. If you saw him on the street, you wouldn't like find him a formidable, you know, he's a great actor. Gandalf is so just like badass. There's no other word for it. He is the toughest man alive.
And great at the you know, when he's saying all like the you know, Gibberty Josh, like, you know, flame of Undun, you know.
He sells the shit out of it.
He does, yeah. And we you know, what I love about Lord of the Rings in general, even in the books, is like, they're very sparing with like powers, right? Gandalf is a wizard, but he's not like casting fire spells and shit all the time. Mostly he's just fighting with a sword, you know, he's not, or, you know, for the most part. And sometimes he'll do little light tricks and stuff like that, you know. And so in this, you know, he blocks with that like, you know, like that crazy like thing he does with his staff, like that big bloom of light, you know, or whatever. But like, you know, he doesn't do a lot of power stuff. So when he does it, I think it really lands. And then, you know, when he falls, like,
I love the flame whip too. Like, what a cool weapon for this thing to have.
Yeah, great to have. And like the idea, like he lets himself fall because he knows like all these orcs are coming and these people need to leave. Like, and I know if I stay here and try to get myself up, they're gonna run all the way back to this bridge, try to help me, and then someone's gonna die. Is really what's going on, you know. And then when he falls, like, again, the music,
just the bit when the Balrog is falling and we see the whip kind of, and then it like in slow motion, the piece of it kind of comes back up and grabs him by the leg. It's just, you know, slow motion in an action scene is, it's so cliched, right? But like it's used perfectly here because it's used sparingly, as you know, we were saying about other things, like as excessive a filmmaker as Peter Jackson is, he gets restraint really well too. So that like this moment hits very hard as well. And, you know, just seeing him falling into darkness, someone says later on, like he's lost in shadow. And I mean, and we see it in the next movie. We see more of his descent, but like which is for here, nice. You just have to like imagine it. And it's, it's maybe scarier that way.
It's very scary because I mean, if you don't know the rest of the story and you see this, like you just think he's dead. Like that's what it is. Like he's dead. You know, like that's how you feel in that moment.
I mean, the first time I saw this, I didn't think he was just dead. I thought he was like descending literally into hell, right?
Right, or whatever. Yeah, but he's
eternal
gone.
Damnation. Right? You know? It's not just like you blink out of existence. It's like you go to wherever is down, whatever is down there.
Yeah, and he's but he's gone, right? Like you think
lost
he's
to
gone,
the shadows,
lost in the shadows, and you know the. Jackson, again, he does not skimp on like the way this affects the people that are in this party, right? You know, like they all have their own way of dealing with it, but like the sadness is you feel it, you know, you really, really feel it in those moments. And again, another with Boromir where it's like, you know, Aragorn's like, get him up, we gotta go. And he's like, just give him a minute. Like,
yeah, right. Well, they emerge back into the daylight, which is great. You know, a contrast from we've been in the dark for a while here. And then they have this sad, mournful moment. And it's like, nope, can't do that. Because I remember just this time, because it's been a while since I've seen it, it's like, those orcs are still there. Like, they are coming. You got to keep moving.
Yeah, as Aragorn said, like if we stay here at night, we're dead, basically. So we gotta go. Like, I'm sorry.
Like, you know, I kind of don't know why them being there in the daytime, they're not dead.
Well, I mean, they don't really do this. They don't really. Again, this is like a book thing. They talk about a moment they talk about a little bit in the movie. Regular orcs don't really go out during the day. They only move at night.
Just the Uruk-hai. That's what makes them. They're like daywalkers.
They're like daywalkers, basically. They basically crossbred like orcs and. Again, what they call goblin men, which goblin men are already orcs and men sort of crossed with each other. So they kind of like merged both again. They did like a super orc basically with the Uruk-hai. So they can't. That's why it's a big deal when they say like Saruman's breeding an army that can that can move in the daylight. Gandalf says that earlier. Orcs don't go out during the day. That's why they hide in caves and then all that kind of stuff. So that's where they have to go. But that moment too, it's such a good moment from Elijah Wood. Where like he says like, come on, Frodo. And like when Elijah just turns around, like that look on his face, it's not just sadness. It's like, I'm lost. Like, it's like, this was also it's like, you think about it, like he's known Gandalf since he was like a baby, basically, you know, like, it's like one of these things where it's like, this person who's been the constant my entire life, I'm without an anchor now. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, this whole thing was about Gandalf, you know?
Yeah, and he's just died, and I have to process that, but also, you know, and we've seen scenes like that and other things before as well, but I guess because of the length of this movie and because that relationship is played so, you know, we get that 25 minutes in the Shire and we see them together in happier times.
Yeah.
You know, it has more of a gravity to it.
And we just saw that scene in the mines where Frodo was waning and wavering on his mission, and Gandalf brought him back, right, to like what he was supposed to be, you know? So
yeah, and now it's like, who's going to do that?
Exactly. We go to Lothlorien next. Another great music, of really sad, kind of this but beautiful ethereal music.
Sure, another great establishing shot, right? Where we get you know,
so
the city with like the people, you know, kind of on the spires in the background. All walking up and down staircases. I mean, it's a simple thing, but it's so important to. It
is really important. It is very important. Yes.
Selling this otherwise kind of, you know, this could be a very silly. I was thinking about, and I hate that I was reminded of this, the Tiger Lily's Village in Pan.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that's like the worst version of this, and this is like the best version of
absolutely, 100%. And I love too. And then Boromir's so sweet to Frodo, like in this moment when they're waiting. Where he's like, you already carry so much with you. Do not carry like the dead with you as well. Like, Gandalf didn't die for nothing. Like, this is, you know, he died for a reason, you know?
We didn't talk about the iconic shot of the ring on the chain in the snow from earlier.
We didn't. You're absolutely right.
Where he picks it up and
God, that shot is so good.
Trailer moment, yeah.
Yeah, and the line that he delivers that line so well, where he says like it's odd we suffer so much like pain and strife over so little a thing.
So little a thing.
Yeah, it's just like it's like this what an amazing moment, and we love Lorien stuff. You mentioned the Sam song to Gandalf where he kind of stands up and does it. What I love about it is that it's not good, it's not perfect. It's just like
what Sam
it's what he feels.
Could come up with in the moment. Yeah.
It's true to what he feels, you know what I mean? And I love that about it. I love this idea like, they don't really go into it too much in the movies at all, which is fine because I think it's more alluring, but it's like this idea of like there are different like civilization of elves, right? Like they do not behave the same way the Rivendell elves behave, right? Galadriel does not behave like Elrond, right? They're very different in the way they behave, and even the way they look and the clothes they wear is very different, and I really like that a lot. And Blanche is great, like, perfect for this. It's so funny when you think about it because like she hadn't quite hit like, she wasn't like I think Elizabeth had already come out right by this point. Like she had already been nominated for an Oscar, but she'd had a couple of years where she hadn't really done too much that was of note. Like she'd done a lot of like, she did like Bandits and like, the shipping news and stuff like, stuff that was supposed to be, like movie
Oscar
hits,
baity movies,
and that they didn't really hit. And this, she's just so perfect. She is so obviously she's a gorgeous woman, obviously, but she's also just got this thing where Cate Blanchett's always had this thing where even when she was 25 or whatever, when she does this movie, when she's super young, when she does this, she feels like she's 4,000 years old. She just has that thing about her.
Yep.
And they made her even more like they did stuff to her, obviously, to make her even more like shining and translucent. But like again, I love this sort of like thing that she has where yes, she is kind and wonderful and everything, but when she it's also a little scary for someone to be that powerful and that old and that like
and
all-knowing,
corruptible, right? Like we see her kind of like wig out a little bit here, and,
which is great.
Yep. Yeah.
One of my favorite memes out of all of Lord of the Rings though is like someone will say like, what is it like to have, what do you think about with your anxiety? And it's like her doing like things that are, things that were, and some things that have not yet come to pass or whatever. But great scene between her and, Elijah Wood. But I love that you get that Gandalf scene too, right? Earlier where very at the beginning where he's like, take it. Like, just, I can't do this. And Gandalf's like, don't give it to me. Because like, you get this idea that like, yeah, with the hobbits, it makes them invisible because they have no power, right? But like, if you've got power, like
it just makes you
it can do some
more
shit.
Powerful.
Yeah, and I like that feeling.
And I like the idea that she is corruptible, and we can see that like she's angelic and sort of godly, but also, she could be devil-like as well.
Yeah. But she passes her own test, right? It's like this idea like this was the last thing she needed to do before she went to the other side, right? Like she needed to prove to herself that like this thing that's been in her life for 5,000 years or whatever, because she's one of the original elven ring bearers, right? She was there when the ring was made.
Resist it still.
That she's like, I never had the chance to do this, and now I can say like I walked away from it, and giving like characters like this who are just in the movie for a very short period of time their own little thing to do, their own little arc to do, is why this works so well, and I think again, something people forget is like every character, no matter how big or small, should have some sort of internal thing they want to do, right? They shouldn't just be there for the other characters to do something with, right? That doesn't work. We get this great extended gift scene, right, where she gives like all the gifts to all of the fellowship, and again, like there's a little bit of it in the theatrical version, but you don't get all of it. You don't get the bow given to Legolas. You don't give the stuff given, the dagger given to Aragorn, all that stuff. You don't get that stuff.
There's like a little moment. I forget which character it is. They're like, you got any more of those? Oh,
it's when she gives Sam the rope. He's like, do you have any more of those swords?
Because I was thinking the same thing, like a rope. I want one of those cool ass knives.
Exactly. Absolutely. So I think I love that scene, and I love this idea that just like, there's still help, right? There's still people on the way that are going to help you. Like, it's not all, it's like Gandalf says earlier, he goes like, there are other forces at work than just the forces of evil, like Bilbo was meant to have the ring, which means you were also meant to have the ring. And that makes me feel better, and I think like that's part of what this is also communicating. Right. And then we're pretty much like, we're going down the river. Basically, we learn like the Uruk-hai are coming one side, the orcs are coming on the other side, take the river, and maybe you'll be able to beat them to where you want to go, basically.
I got to talk about one thing. I mean, they're just traveling in this scene, but I remember sitting in the theater the first time I saw this with my buddy elbowing me every 5 minutes, like, this is awesome. Holy shit. The moment where I almost did it back to him was this shot. It's just it's one of my favorite things I've ever seen in a movie, right? These two statues of the kings standing astride the river. The design of that, the immensity of that, you see it from far away, and then you see the boats kind of, I love, boats and nautical stuff and seeing stuff from the water. And there's this moment, like, I feel like I'm there, right? There's these towering statues that are kind of looking down at the characters, these like very, stately looking kings, this like ancient architecture. I love that idea. And when you see them, I mean, it's a CGI, it's an effect, although the way that it looks, you can see the cracks in the stone. You can
they're those bigatures. They built those things. And like, that's what they're moving the camera around, and they're just filling in the other stuff. They're like compositing in stuff.
But like, you can see like the individual pieces, like you look at one of their arms and it's in sections, and like the way that looks and the way that feels. I love that moment. So like, that is, Brian goes to the podcast. Brian Verderos always talks about his movie snapshots. That will always be, this is one of my favorite movies, and that is absolutely, it's my favorite moment in the entire trilogy, and not much is really happening there. They're just going down the river, but it's like, that's the thing that makes this world, to me, feel the most real. It's just that, this ancient, you can tell they are ancient, you can tell they are massive, and that's what this trilogy is all about, right?
Yeah.
Like this world, as I've said, this is less a movie and more like a universe you live in for 4 hours at a time when you watch the extended versions. And I absolutely love it. And if it never got better than that, it would still be one of my favorite movies.
And it's another one of those moments, just like the Khazad, like when they're in the dwarf city, where it's like, we are not excluding wonder and awe from where we are right now.
No,
we're still letting it into the movie, right?
That is what it is. And I remember being in the theater, seeing that the first time, and I don't ever remember feeling awe and wonder in a movie. And I've seen so many movies and I love so many movies, but like that moment, seeing that image, I was just completely blown away by that, and still am. It holds up. I didn't mention the music this before.
God, it's in that main Rings theme, and it's like so good.
It's, I don't know when this episode's gonna drop, but it's summertime now. I like to be outside as much as possible, and I did a very kind of silly thing where I like to watch movies outside on my deck, and most movies work just fine that way. I have a decent sized laptop, but not a huge screen or anything. I was like, I'm going to watch Fellowship of the Ring on this very small screen outside, so I could be outside, in this very sort of limited kind of format, right? I mean, I don't recommend anybody do that. This movie is best seen in a theater all at once. You don't break it up into pieces, but like, even just seeing it on a little laptop screen outside when I'm distracted by, fireflies and the moon and God knows what running through my backyard, I'm like, this still works exactly the same way. I still feel the scope and the scale and the sweep of it. And, it's just, like I said, it is my movie snapshot for this movie. And it's one of my favorite images in all of movies.
I mean, I think that's a fine way to watch this movie. I mean, that sounds great. Speaking of, going back to Brian for 1 second, I remember he was like, he was like, oh man, I gotta watch this is when Wall-E came. I said, watch. He's like, I think I'm gonna I'll just watch it on the plane on my iPod, which was like an iPod Classic. I was like, Brian, you're not watching Wall-E on your iPod for the first time. But anyway, but you're right. The long shot, the shot from underneath, and then that sweeping shot that goes like around at their heads or whatever, where you can see the falls like behind them or whatever. It's amazing. And again, Aragorn gives you the little history thing. Like, these are like statues of like my ancestors or whatever. And it's like, and he's like, I've never seen this. Right. And I've always wanted to see this. And it's like, man, if he's never seen this, like, that's like, wow. And you bring it back to the characters as well in that moment. Like, there's a personal connection to him above just like the spectacle and like wonder of it for us as a viewer, which I just love. I love that so much.
It's also just one of the places I've always thought this. Someday I'll write a paper on this, right? Like, if you've seen enough movies, you've kind of, and video games, media does this, right? Mm. Like, in your memory, in your dreams, whatever, places you've been and places you've seen, are kind of the same thing, right? Like, and like, this is one of those places, right? Like, I feel like I've been there. I feel like I've been on this river and looked up and been sort of awestruck by these things. And, it takes a very powerful sort of movie to do that. Most movies kind of just drift by and you don't get an image that is just that powerful. And I could, I could talk about it for hours. Just this one scene, this one brief, it's not even a scene. It's like an interstitial. It's between two important scenes.
Yeah. And I mean, well, there's a reason why, like, like the original, like, teaser poster or whatever was that image. It's that image. Like, when you go on like iTunes or whatever, that this is the image that is like the image for Fellowship of the Ring. Like, it is, it is a amazing classic.
Yeah, although it doesn't work as a still image, right? Like, I remember seeing that poster and being like, oh, that's kind of like the Jesus statue in Rio de Janeiro. Like, it kind of just feels like a fake version of that, which, not that that's unimpressive, right?
Yeah.
But, I've never been there. I've never seen that. But I feel much more like I've
well, yeah, absolutely.
The way this looks and the way this moves actually in context of the movie is so much more powerful.
Unbelievable. And then we basically have the breaking of the Fellowship, right? This is what happens next. Galadriel, basically in her scene speaks to Frodo and says, look, like, the only person you can trust in this situation is you. Like, to have a ring is to be alone. It's just the way it is. Like, you know that the ring is going to take Boromir. Like, you need to, and one by one, they're all going to fall, basically. Like, and so he makes the decision that he's going to leave, and Boromir tries to take the ring from him, which is this just like, really sad scene, because you've seen this guy be so good for most of the time.
We really like him.
We really like him. And this moment where you just like, it all falls apart, and, he and I love that moment where he snaps out of it, and the complete just sadness.
He's so contrite.
He's so like gutted by what he did. He can't believe what he did. And but the visual here of Frodo running up the hill with the ring on and going on that watchtower, and like the eye coming like flying across like the world, to him or whatever. And we get a great goodbye with Aragorn, right? Like I would have walked with you in the very fires of Mordor, and him passing his own little test, right? Like, like closing Frodo's hand around the ring and being like, I'll let you go. And then it's great transition is one thing where like, where all of a sudden he goes like, run, and Frodo sees the sword glowing. And I just love little visual things. You don't have to say it, right? You know what's happening. And then the
established like an hour and change earlier in the movie. The sword glows blue when there's orcs around.
Yeah.
And then we see the sword glowing blue. It's simple, like setup, payoff stuff.
And then the camera just moves, follows Aragorn in slow motion. You see Frodo turn and run. You see his like cape, like basically like float into the frame and go away. And when his frame goes away, basically you see all of the Uruk-hai like walking up to Aragorn, and it's just like such a great little piece of filmmaking. And then Aragorn is just a badass of badasses, man. Like, takes that sword, puts it in front of his face, and then just like...
Incredible fight scene here, but like we've been so overwhelmed by everything else. Like, it's almost like, oh yeah, it's another fight scene.
But if this had been the last fight scene of the last movie, you would have been like, what a fight scene. But it's like unbelievable stuff, right? So we get Aragorn fighting it first, and what I love, again, talk about geography, right? We got Aragorn at the top of the hill, right? We've got Frodo running down the hill, back towards the shore. And, we've got orcs everywhere, and we've got like people here, and you never are like, but doesn't make sense. Like, where are they and where are they? Like, you get it. And so much was brought together by that amazing fucking shot where the camera just goes down the hill in a oneer through the woods. And if you hear Jackson talk about it, he's like, there is no like system to do this. Like, you couldn't like, aerial drone photography didn't exist at this point, right? You couldn't fly a drone through the woods. Like, that didn't exist. So they created like this wire rigging system that they ran it from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill. And we basically just threw the camera.
Like a zip line for the camera
down the hill. And there was somebody at the other end that had to catch it, basically. There's no operator. But
watching this time after having seen Bad Taste not too long ago, when we started talking about Peter Jackson, I was like, oh, that's one of those things that just sort of, he was climbing a mountain, behind his house in New Zealand as a kid, and is like, this would be a cool place to stage a fight scene. So he did it in his first movie, and like now here is that times 1,000. But these little like pet things, this fighting on top of a massive hill. That's Peter Jackson. It's a trademark.
But I mean, that shot has always stuck in my head because it's like it seems impossible. That shot,
it's amazing.
And like, there's no CG fixes there. There's no CG characters. You're following him down the hill, and like you're seeing all of this stuff going on, which is just crazy. Love the little moment where Merry and Pippin realize that Frodo's leaving. And how they kind of like sacrifice themselves to draw them away. Love that little moment. Of course, we get to see really Legolas for the first time really go off, where he's just like, I mean, I remember like the palpable like sort of like rush in the theater the first time. The people like kind of like couldn't help themselves when he's just like firing the arrows. So
another
fast.
Character that I forgot he's in this movie a lot, but like we don't see as much of him. He's not an active participant in things the way I remember him being.
He's mostly just for fight scenes is basically what his main
I mean, we see a lot more of him in the next two, but like I don't know, I put so much into this movie that's like not there, and this trilogy does run together to me a little bit. Like there was a moment that I think is in Return of the King that I was like, how come I haven't seen that yet? And it's like, it's 2 movies down the road.
And this like moment where, and I think the moment where Boromir comes in at that last minute and like saves the hobbits, and then like he just goes off. Like I just love that. The hobbits fighting with him, and you do a great job of building. I was like, they're gonna win, And it's also this idea. It's again a power level thing where like there's like 4 of them, and there's like 200 orcs, and they're just like they're gonna win. Like there's just no way. And then we get high pony Uruk-hai show up with those arrows. And again, a great little fight scene that happens, right? Where it's just between Aragorn and this like this Uruk-hai, where it's just, the little moments like when he stabs him in the leg with the knife, and then the Uruk-hai grabs the knife out of his leg, licks the knife, and then throws it at Aragorn, and he knocks it away with his sword, It's like, it's all these little moments. Like, that's not, once again, that just happened. Like, they had to choreograph that to happen, That's not a CG knife flying through the air. It's not a CG sword. It's just like somebody had to knock that knife out of the sky with a sword, which is crazy. Really nice emotional scene between, I think the Boromir death scene is great.
Oh, yeah.
And like the, him sort of, being like, it's my fault. Everything's my fault. And Aragorn comforting him. And then like the whole, like, I would have followed you, my king, he ends it with my king or whatever. Such a great, like emotional moment. And Aragorn saying that like, I will not let our people fail, all of that stuff, after earlier, he's been like, I will not bring the ring within 100 leagues of the White City. And like, calling them your people and all that stuff. Like really great, I think, finishing off for the characters. Merry and Pippin obviously have been taken at this point.
Aragorn fighting that high ponytail Uruk-hai and like hacking its limbs off again. Very Dead Alive. Very
him pulling the sword in. Pulling the sword in when it's in his belly. Yeah.
Like Peter Jackson made this movie. That's right. That's that same guy.
And then beheading him by ripping the sword out of his belly. And I love that Aragorn just looks exhausted. Like he's that was hard. I like that. That's love that. Love all that. And then of course, like we talked about the reprise of the Gandalf line. Him taking the boat and Sam not being able to swim, coming into all this stuff. Like I love all this stuff, and then you really get what I think, is going to be like the thing that's going to really be almost the center of the rest of the movies, which is this Sam and Frodo relationship, which obviously been important, but when it's 9 people, it's not as central as in a moment like this,
Yeah.
And this moment makes me cry so much. Like when he's like, when Sam is doing the like, I don't mean to, about leaving him or whatever, gets me so much,
Yep. And then the shot, it's a thing that you don't often see in movies. It's the shot across the river where the 2 of them are just like way, way, way in the background of the shot. And you see them running up the hill and just kind of disappearing. And it's like, you get a sense, even though we've got 2 movies to go here, it's like, yep, these people aren't going to see each other again for a very, very long time. And you really feel it. And just the way that's shot, you know, and it's a simple thing. It's just a very long shot, right? We see them ascending the hill and they disappear at the top of the frame, and then we're going back the other way. Like there's no going across that river. You can't go with them. And
absolutely.
We're starting up a whole new thing now.
Another thing I love in the fight scene is when Boromir starts blowing the horn. I love that, like the way it sounds. I love the way it sounds, you know, like these little sound design choices are great all across this trilogy, obviously. But like, you know, you have to decide at a certain point, like, how is this thing that's written in a book that's supposed to evoke a certain feeling actually going to sound, you know, or look or whatever. And like those decisions are a million little decisions that can make or break something. And it's such a powerful and great way to do it. You know, love the last little moment, right, where, you know, Frodo and Sam are on that like rocky cliff or whatever, you know, and he says like, I don't suppose we'll ever see any of them ever again. And Sam is like, we might, you know, and that moment where Frodo kind of realizes like, no, you needed to be with me. Like I needed you with me, you know, I don't have Gandalf anymore, but I have, like he's realizing, right? Like I've got you. And like, that is the thing, you know,
and the vista in front of them, you know, this hellish, like the way you were on the borders of Mordor, and like that is such a better teaser for the next movie than any other, you know, any Marvel like mid-credit sequence kind of thing. It's just like, it's a brief shot, you know. I remember it being a lot longer because it's so like, this is what is in front of them, you know. I love stuff like that. Again, that's that quest narrative that I like so much. Like we get to see where they're going and how they're going to get there, and boy, what kinds of things are they going to encounter?
And there ain't no green in front of them anymore. Like it's been all green before.
Rock and fire and clouds.
And we also, you know, we get the tease for, you know, what's going to be Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas' side of the story as well, which I think is great. You know, basically like,
which is a more sort of conventional, you know, it's, like I said, the second movie is kind of a war movie. They join a battle and they participate in it.
But I mean,
shitty way of describing that movie, but that's what happens.
But we got, you know, we have like the Boromir sort of death scene where they put him over the falls, you know, and everything. And I love that.
That's great too.
Little details like, you know, Aragorn puts on Boromir's like gauntlets, you know, his like Gondor gauntlets, which is a great little thing. They don't call it out, you know, they don't say like, I will take these to honor him or whatever, you know. You're just like, you could miss it, and it's fine if you miss it. Like, it's not like it's going to change the story for you, but it's just like, this has changed the way he's operating. You know what I mean? Like, this is not, you know, he's not the same sort of like nomad that he was before, you know? Something
about the Viking funeral type stuff, just putting him in the boat and pushing it off the falls. I love stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when we get, you know, it's a, you know, the great moment, you know, let's hunt some orc, and then they go running off, and Gimli's all excited, and you get a little friendship thing between him and Legolas, you know, love all that. And then the movie's over, and then we get the Oscar-winning final song, May It Be. This won an Oscar for every single one of its final songs, which is like an insane thing, you know.
I never thought I could be such an Anya fan until I saw this movie.
She does this one, and she does the. No, she doesn't. Annie Lennox does the third one, I believe, but I think she might do the second one too. But so this movie came out in December 19th, 2001, in the United States. It made $319 million domestic box office, which now would be somewhere in the world of like $500 million now if it was in today's box office numbers. 569 international, 809 million total worldwide, which would be over $1 billion now if it was now. And the other two will make over $1 billion, each of them.
Yeah, I actually, those numbers were a lot lower. Not a lot lower, but I thought this was an even bigger hit than it was. Obviously, it was very successful and kind of paved the way for the rest of the trilogy to be. But I don't know. I remember this was like all anybody was talking about for a while. Like, this was the movie of that year.
This is like, you know, to put it in modern terms, this is like basically Avengers level, like, box office numbers, like in that day. Like, if that, like, this was huge. This is a crazy box office number for this movie. Like, and you know, it making this worldwide number is also insane. Like, that's an insane thing for then. Like, movies, you know, we had a run of about 10 years where a bunch of like Aquaman made over $1 billion in the worldwide box office. We're obviously retreated from that now. That's not a thing anymore. But like, this was making almost $1 billion worldwide is crazy. Like, that's not a thing that happened a lot then.
Well, there's that. There's also the fact that this genre movie, you know, this kind of not exactly a niche thing, right? Because so many people went to see it, but you know, this is a high fantasy movie. It's it's something that like is for a certain subset of the audience.
It's a nerd thing.
It's a nerd thing, but it's getting nominated for Oscars. It wins a bunch of Oscars.
It transcended it, obviously. on its face, it's a nerd thing. It's these fantasy books, it's like, it's really much a nerd thing. It wins.
It is, but I feel like this movie is good enough and it's cool enough where it brought a lot of people into that world that would have never been in that world before.
Well, it's right in this time area where this is happening, right? Where X-Men is coming out, this is coming out, Spider-Man is coming out. Like, the box office world is changing, right? We're the people who grew up on all this stuff are becoming people who have money, and it's like, they are going to dominate, for the next 25 years, for good and for ill.
I was going to say, for better and for worse.
Yes. Yep. It wins Academy Awards for Best Cinematography. Obviously, very well deserved.
Yep.
Best Makeup, obviously. Best Original Score, Best Visual Effects. And it had 9 other nominations: Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor for Ian McKellen, and Best Director. It doesn't win those, obviously. We will need to wait until Return of the King for it to get its real, Oscar flowers.
But I was very enthused at the time seeing this nominated for Best Picture. I was like, okay, I know you can't duplicate this, but I remember being very optimistic about where Hollywood was going with this movie being one of the biggest, I think it was the biggest moneymaker of that year, and being in awards contention. It's like, okay, we're going to make genre films that are like the best films ever made for a while. And it didn't really happen.
I mean, no, not really. I mean, not really. Let's see. What were the highest grossing movies of 2001? We'll do, here we go. Let's do worldwide just to look at it. It is not the biggest moneymaker. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone is the biggest moneymaker.
Right, we're just talking about that a couple hours ago.
I mean, it doesn't outgross it by probably as much as they expected it to, right? It makes, domestically, it only makes $4 million more total, basically. Harry Potter makes $317. Lord of the Rings makes $313. Harry Potter makes a little bit more worldwide. It makes $974 worldwide. And then the top 10 that year are Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Monsters, Inc., Shrek. Ocean's 11 is the number 5 movie of the year worldwide, by the way. Pearl Harbor, The Mummy Returns, Jurassic Park, Planet of the Apes, and Hannibal are our top 10 for that year. Obviously, the next year, Spider-Man will come out and I'll do an insane box office as well. But that's Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. We did it in less than the runtime of the extended edition, so I'm proud of us. Wonderful movie. Again, I'm excited to. It was really funny because I was like, I love this movie to death, but I was like, it's a long movie, and I have to finish it, before we do the show. But then once I finished this one, I was like, should I just start Two Towers now? I had that
thought
feeling.
The same thing, although I had an even more perverse thought. It's like, I kind of want to watch this again before I watch Two Towers.
I did watch scenes of it again afterwards. I watched the last battle scene. I watched the Moria scene. I was just like, let me just watch this again because this is so good. But yeah, I mean, I really truly think it's the best that big blockbuster filmmaking gets, and it's just an insane level up, for an already good filmmaker, a great filmmaker maybe already, but it's unbelievable. The difference. We just watched The Frighteners, which I think is a great movie, but it's come on, man. The
Frighteners is a great movie made by a mortal, whereas this is something far beyond that. This to me also, the age that we're at, what we grew up with, we came of age in the era where Spielberg was canon and Star Wars was canon, and we grew up with some great movies, but we never had a trilogy quite like this. I think this is the best trilogy, and this is our trilogy, right?
Yeah.
This is when we became, we were adults when these movies were coming out. And at the time I was like, well, nothing's ever going to be better than Star Wars, than the original Star Wars trilogy. This is a better trilogy.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's debatable in a lot of ways, but
I would do this thing. I started doing this thing with them where I would see them at midnight. I guess the only one I really saw at midnight by itself was Two Towers. But I saw Two Towers midnight, and then the next day I went with the people who loved the movies but weren't crazy enough to go at midnight. See a 3-hour movie. It would we go the next day, and then that weekend I would go with my parents, and that's what would happen. I mean, we'll talk about this when we get to Return of the King, but I went to the Trilogy Tuesday thing where they showed before it launched, they showed the extended edition of Fellowship of the Ring, the extended edition of Two Towers. There was an hour break, and then they showed Return of the King all in one day, and you watched them all in one day. We'll talk about that when we get to Return of the King, because it's that's my story for seeing that movie. But at the lead up to Return of the King, I was watching like every day in college, like I would just put on like Fellowship of the Ring and Two Towers extended and just let them play like on loop basically all day before.
Like, you know, I love this movie.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and yet your love for it goes so far beyond mine.
It's also it's also like a social thing too, where it's like my best friend was also like deeply ingrained in this stuff. So it was like this thing that we really deeply shared together as as friends, as a connection. Like these movies, these books, like they were like a big part of our friendship as well.
That's fair. And I don't know if I've ever had a friend. Like, I never like had that with movies. I've had that with bands, with music, with people before, but never with. I was always the biggest film nerd until I met like Brian and you.
Yeah.
You know,
we would cast the movies with our friends, basically like who is the Sam, who's the Frodo, who's the whatever, who's this, we would do.
So
that.
Who are you?
I was Sam.
Well, I'm pretty sure if I had known you back then, I would have been Gimli. I think I still am.
We would do it a lot of movies too. We would do it. One of the funniest ones, and then we're getting out of it because it's almost 1 o'clock in the morning when we're recording this.
I budgeted for 2, so.
We did it with Moulin Rouge, and we made Brian the Duke.
I'll tell you, I absolutely love that movie too. Another one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah.
2001 was a pretty good movie year.
Good movie year. Very good movie year. So that's going to do it for our episode on Fellowship of the Ring. If you liked this, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on your podcasting platform of choice. You can go to our Substack, intrepidfilmographers.com, and you can subscribe there as well if you would like to do that. Like I said, if this is your first time listening, we did all the previous Peter Jackson movies before this, leading up to this. Obviously we're going to do this whole trilogy. We're going to do King Kong. We're going to do the Hobbit trilogy as well. So we're going to do all of his stuff. What
about the Lovely Bones? You don't want to mention the Lovely Bones?
I forgot about the Lovely Bones.
Got to be some Bones fans out there.
I don't know if there's many Bones fans
out
there. Some boneheads out there. But that'll be a fun episode because I'll be able to talk about. I read that book and I loved that book, so we'll be able to talk about that a little bit too. When we talk about
that's a great book.
That episode. Yeah. It is a great book. So yeah, really excited about that. We've also covered Joe Wright. We've covered Karen Kusama. We've covered Ben Affleck. We covered Joseph Kosinski. So we've got 30 episodes for you guys to check out if you like this episode. But stay tuned next week for the Two Towers. But until then, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Bobby.
And thank you to everybody who's been watching or listening. Until next time, be good to one another. Later.